Chapter 23-22. Warriors of the Wandering Bandits did not have much loyalty. They were wandering bandits to begin with. One day they could be in one legion and the next they could be in another legion. Bosses were changing all the time. The stronger ones would be the boss. One day, when the boss was killed, the next boss would be the next. If the boss was not nice to them or if there was no future to follow the boss, the wandering bandits would find another boss. Didn't Sky God come later? He became the new leader after the previous boss was killed. Now that Luli had killed Qing Tian, the wandering bandits naturally wanted to follow Luli. Surrender? Luli curled his lips. He was not in the mood to be a boss. He was here to rob. What was the point of being a boss? Leading a bunch of good-for-nothings to commit crimes every day? Therefore, Luli glanced over to them coldly and shouted, "I don't need you to surrender. Hand over all your interspatial rings or die." Interspatial rings? The group looked at each other, speechless. Soon, they came to their senses. This mysterious man seemed to be robbing them. They were bandits, a relatively powerful group of wandering bandits of the Stormy Mountain. Today, a man had come to rob them? Luli was so powerful that he could kill all the leaders on his own. How could such an important man be robbing them? Weren't important people in need of divine stones and treasures? How could they do something so tasteless? They were small fries and didn't have many treasures or divine stones with them. How could Luli not let them go? Was he a human being? Whoosh whoosh, Luli put away all the interspatial rings and weapons of Qing Tian and the others. 2 interspatial rings were destroyed. Luli felt it was a shame. After he put them away, he was enraged when he saw nobody was cooperating. The worms of the void flew over and enveloped more than 100 people. Those were all warriors that had passed through 3 tribulations. They could not stop the worms of the void. They rolled around on the ground and many were gnawed to death. Run! The others were scared out of their wit. Some of them flew up and tried to run away. Luli waved his hand and the beam of light from the wind warcraft glowed. The more than a dozen people who tried to run away were pierced through and turned into minced meat. Many of the others wanted to run but they didn't dare to do so. With so many wind demonic beasts, unless everyone fled together, there might be someone who could escape in the chaos. However, if anyone dared to stand out, the dozen or so people were the perfect example. "Sir, this is my space ring, don't kill me." Finally, someone was afraid. He took out his space ring and threw it on the ground in front of him. The space ring contained his lifetime's worth of treasures, but if he died, the treasures would belong to someone else. Where there's life, there's hope. I'll just go back and snatch it. With the first person taking the lead, the rest became much easier as people began taking out their space rings one after another. Of course, there were also people who secretly took out another space ring from their space ring and quickly swallowed it. Those who took out their space rings stand on the left. Luli waved his hand and the dozen or so people who had taken out their interspatial rings immediately went to the empty space on the left with joy. Luli turned to the others. They all took out their interspatial rings and threw them on the ground. Wait! When a warrior at the peak of the 3rd tribulation threw out his interspatial ring, Luli said, "Spit out the interspatial ring in your stomach. If you don't, I will dig it out for you." That warrior turned pale. He trembled as he sensed Luli's murderous intent. Eventually, he used divine energy to force the interspatial ring out. Then, he walked to the empty space on the left, crying. One by one, they threw out their interspatial rings. Many of them resorted to all kinds of tricks. But Luli had activated the trace of Tao so he could sense everything clearly. He felt the space nearby was under his control. Nobody's little tricks could escape his detection. Of course, some succeeded. Some of them had special interspatial artifacts. But those artifacts did not feel like interspatial artifacts at all. They were more like strands of hair attached to their bodies. Luli could not sense them either. Luli didn't mind. Those that could escape his detection must be impressive. Those warriors didn't have many treasures, so Luli didn't bother to ask. Soon, everyone's interspatial rings were thrown out. The situation was not in their favor. If they didn't do so, they would die and they would have nothing left. Whoosh! Luli rushed down and collected everyone's interspatial rings. Everyone stared at him. Many of them felt their hearts aching. They had saved up for years, and they had risked their lives time and time again. Now they had all become Luli's. It was as if they were their own children that had been taken away after they had grown up. Luli was about to leave after he collected all the interspatial rings. But after some thoughts, he decided that since he was here, he might as well make some more money. There seemed to be another legion nearby. He glanced over the warriors and an idea came to him. He said, "I am going to loot the Tatian legion nearby. Do you want to come with me? I will deal with the powerful warriors there, and you can take care of the average warriors. All the loot is yours." The thousands of warriors looked at each other. Luli had just looted them and now he was going to loot another legion? Or was he going to take them with him? They found it funny. Someone slapped them and said, "Come with me. I will take you to bully others." But after some thoughts, many of them decided to go with Luli. They were poor now. Following Luli would be a great source of shelter. Maybe they could get back what they had lost. They knew the Tatian Legion was similar to them. There were 4 leaders, but they were not as powerful as Heaven's Pillar. They were not a match for Luli. It was not risky to go with Luli. They could get back what they had lost. It was worth the risk. More importantly, if they said no, would they be killed by Luli right away? Many of them knew very well that Luli was taking them with him because he wanted them to be his cover. Then, he would come out suddenly and catch the enemies off guard. He would kill several 4th Tribulation warriors of the Tatian Legion at the lowest cost. In other words, they were cannon fodder, a shield. Usually, cannon fodder would die a miserable death. With Luli there, victory would not be a problem. That being said, nobody could be sure that they would die this time. What? None of you want to? A glint of coldness rose in Luli's eyes. The warriors were scared. They nodded in agreement. Luli waved his hand in satisfaction and said, "Let's go. Let's go. After this, we will go our separate ways. You can go your own way." Whoosh, 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 they flew to the northwest. With so many of them, there was no need to hide. They could not hide anyway. They had to force their way through. Luli put away the worms of the void, the wind warcraft, and the phantom king. He dashed into the army, pretending to be a soldier. The warriors around him felt pressured. They would glance at Luli from time to time as if he was a demon. "Don't look at me. Treat me like an average warrior. I will gouge out your eyeballs if you keep looking at me." Luli pulled a long face. The warriors would look at him from time to time. Even an idiot could tell that something was wrong. The powerful warriors of the enemy would target him immediately. Chapter 23:23. Thousands of warriors were flying over in such a large manner that it could not be hidden. The smaller legions nearby were trembling in fear, thinking that the Sky High Legion was going to wipe them out. When they realized that the Sky High Legion was flying toward the Sky High Legion, they were relieved. But they were curious as well. Was the Sky High Legion going to fight the Sky High Legion? So be it. Why were only warriors of the 3rd Tribulation and not a leader of the 4th Tribulation? The Sky High Legion was not coming. Were the thousands of warriors courting death? Scouts from nearby forces were sent out. They followed the Sky High Legion secretly to see what was going on. After all, the 2 forces were big. If they were to fight, the situation at the Stormy Mountain would be affected. Gradually, the news spread out. The more than a dozen forces nearby were alarmed. They all sent scouts to the Sky High Legion. Luli could sense the presence of the scouts, but he didn't do anything. He knew there was no other way. With so many people, it was impossible to hide their track. Unless he cleaned up all the smaller forces nearby, that would take a long time. By then, the situation would be out of control. After flying for 4 hours, the main force finally arrived at the Sky High Legion. The Sky High Legion had received the news and they were all on guard. Li Shi, the team leader of the Sky High Legion, was confused. They had nothing against the Sky High Legion. They had always minded their own business. Why would the Sky High Legion come out tonight? Had they lost their minds? There was another thing that confused Li Shi. According to the scouts, the Sky High Legion didn't come with them. Not a single warrior of the Fourth Tribulation was here. Were the thousands of warriors here to die? Attack! Luli observed for a while and gave the order to attack. This kind of battle must be fast, so that the enemy could not figure out what was going on and they could fish in troubled waters. Only in this way could they end the battle quickly. Otherwise, things could go wrong. Formation of arrows. Charge toward the center. Luli gave orders to the junior commanders in the army. The junior commanders took control of their subordinates and divided them into teams. Like arrows, they dashed toward the mountains. The junior commanders knew very well that Luli needed them to reach the center, to get close to the Fourth Tribulation warriors so that he could have a chance to sneak up on them. They also understood that this was the only way to be safer and to have fewer casualties. Attack! On top of a tall mountain, a warrior clad in black armor and wearing an Azura mask issued an order. The enemy had already fought their way to their doorstep. How could they be afraid of battle? Although the Sky High military's Fourth Tribulation martialists had not appeared, he was not afraid. If they did not appear, he would kill these thousands of people first. Whoosh! Squads of soldiers soared into the sky from the surrounding mountain peaks, surrounding them like a pocket. They also had a few thousand people on their side, but they were divided into many troops and spread out to attack. Boom, boom, boom! Bang, 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 chi, chi, chi! The sky was filled with streams of light. Countless magic treasures danced in the air, and the surrounding void shattered. Countless small mountains were flattened, buildings were destroyed, and corpses fell down. Many spatial rings, armors, and divine weapons automatically detached themselves and danced in the air. No one cared about the destruction of the buildings, nor did they pick up space rings, battle armors, divine weapons, or treasures. The warriors on both sides were in a frenzy. When two enemies met on a narrow path, only the brave would win. The Sky High military had no way out and the Sky Tai army had to protect their homeland. Neither side could retreat. The only way out was to fight to the death. Luli had not used any ultimate skill. He had been fighting with his fist. His attacks were not sharp enough to avoid being targeted. Every time, he had to spend a great deal of effort to kill a warrior. This was more fitting for his abilities as a Second Tribulation Realm warrior. The Sky High military was brave. The arrow formation made it easier for them to attack. They pressed forward without getting entangled with their enemies. They were not fast, but they were advancing bit by bit. What is going on here? Li Shi did not care about the situation here. He threw a glance to a Fourth Tribulation warrior who was in charge of intelligence. Recently, he had sent out more than 100 scouts to check the surroundings. Li Shi believed that Sky High and the others must be nearby to launch a sneak attack. Therefore, he sent someone to check while he stayed here to take command. If it were just these people, he could kill them all by himself. Nothing. This is strange. A Fourth Tribulation old man stroked his beard and glanced around like a mouse. He murmured, "Could it be that Qing Tian and the others are hiding in someone's spatial artifact?" "That is possible." Sky High nodded. They would not believe that Sky High and the others were not here. It all depended on how they showed up. They checked the warriors with psychic power, trying to see if Sky High and the others were disguised as insignificant warriors. Naturally, Luli caught their attention. That being said, all the Fourth Tribulation warriors paid him no more attention. He was just a warrior with an unparalleled divine body. They could kill a second Tribulation Realm warrior easily. After searching again and again, they still could not find Qing Tian and the others. Li Shi and the others were a little confused because they realized that these several thousand people did not have any spatial rings, weapons, or armor. All of them were fighting barehanded while releasing all sorts of true meanings. If there was no interspatial ring, then there was no interspatial artifact. Where were Sky High and the others hiding? More than 1,000 warriors of the Sky High military had been killed. Sky High and the others should be here by now. Otherwise, if their underlings were all killed, what was the point of a few commanders remaining without an army? The army pressed on. Apart from the junior commanders, nobody had armors or weapons. It was difficult to move forward and the casualty rate was high. After the time for one incense stick to burn, the army finally reached the mountain in the middle. Lu Li's eyes glowed when he saw Li Shi and the other three standing together. Without any hesitation, Lu Li sent a message to the minor commanders and told them to take the initiative to attack the 4 warriors at the 4th Tribulation. The minor commanders were bitter, but they had to do it. If they didn't cooperate with Lu Li, they would all die. Li Shi and the others were enraged to see the junior commanders clasping their fists to Lu Li and the others. How dare they attack them at the peak of the 3rd Tribulation? Were they courting death? Buzzing, 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 almost at the same time, Lu Li's interspatial artifact glowed. Wind Warcraft came out one after another. Some of them released fundamental principle of wind, and some of their horns lit up. Li Shi and the others were too focused on the junior commanders to notice Lu Li. By the time they realized what was going on, the gale had arrived. Li Shi and the others were not particularly strong, just like Sky High and the others. Under the sneak attack of the Wind Warcraft, the outcome was miserable. After a round of attacks, Li Shi was the only one left alive. The other 3 were killed in an instant. Poof! Chapter 23-24. Li Shi's ending was the same as Qing Tian's. Lu Li didn't even send out the Ghost King. He killed Li Shi with the Wind Warcraft alone. At that moment, the battlefield quieted down. The 4 leaders were suddenly killed. This made many people dumbfounded. Their leaders were all dead. What was the point of fighting? There were many warriors around Lu Li, but they retreated at once. They looked at Lu Li as if he were a demon. Surrender and we will spare your lives. Lu Li saw that someone was running away. The Wind Warcraft attacked at the same time. Dozens of beams of light were shot out and the dozens of warriors were turned into minced meat. Lu Li glanced over and said, "If you think you are fast enough, you can try to run." Seeing that the dozens of warriors were reduced to blood and the warriors were glaring at them, nobody dared to run anymore. Someone flew down, knelt on the ground and shouted, "I surrender, I surrender." It was just a change of leader. It didn't matter who was the leader. They didn't care. With someone taking the lead, the rest was easy. One by one, they flew down, knelt on the ground, and surrendered. "You can take care of them." Lu Li kept his promise. He waved his hand and flew to where the 4 leaders were killed. He picked up the 4 interspatial rings. At the same time, he flew around in the sky and collected all the interspatial rings. "Give me your interspatial rings or we will kill you." The warriors of the Sky High Legion were now the masters. Lu Li had fulfilled his promise, which made them want to cry. All of them went down to grab the interspatial rings and weapons. The warriors of the Sky High Legion were dumbfounded. Didn't they surrender for a change of leader? How come they were still robbing? They were going to follow Lu Li from now on. They were on the same side. Lu Li stood in midair with dozens of Wind Warcraft lined up. The warriors on the ground didn't dare to do anything and they handed over their interspatial rings. Some of them were badly injured by the warriors of the Sky High Legion and their interspatial rings were taken by force. Lu Li didn't mind them. He began to check his harvest. He used psychic power to check the interspatial rings of Qing Tian and Li Shi. The wealth in their interspatial rings must be amazing. Hiss hiss, Luli gasped after a few glances. The harvest this time was beyond his imagination, especially in Tai Tion's interspatial ring. The godly materials and treasures inside were piled up like a mountain. The god stones were piled up like a small mountain as well. Luli remembered that the Sky Force seemed to have just looted a middle-sized city. He was overjoyed. He checked all the interspatial rings carefully and decided to leave. This was because he had at least 1 or 2 billion divine stones in total. There were also some treasures that he couldn't estimate the value of, so his harvest this time was more than enough. He had swept away 2 legions, and the news should have spread by now. It would definitely be difficult to annihilate the other legions, and he might even anger Tian Kanzi. He didn't dare to take the risk and decided to leave. He couldn't just leave like this. Luli waited for a while. Seeing that the loot was almost done, Luli shouted, "All of you, move towards the Fire Wolf Legion in the north. Same old rules. You can take whatever you can." The eyes of the people from the Sky High military lit up. Although more than 1,000 people had been injured or killed, they had won easily. If he did the same thing again, it wouldn't be too difficult to take down the Firewolf army. "Let's go." Many warriors flew up. Luli waved his hand and flew toward the north with a group of warriors, leaving the warriors of the Tatian Legion behind, who felt like weeping but had no tears. "You go first. This time I cannot come out in the open. I will follow you secretly." After the time for 1 incense stick to burn, Luli sent a message to the junior commanders and then went underground by himself. The junior commanders didn't ask any questions. Luli was right. Maybe the Fire Wolf Legion had already received the news. It would be better for Luli to hide in the dark. They flew toward the Fire Wolf Legion in a formidable array. Luli snuck out of the stormy mountain from underground. Now that he had gained enough, he was ready to sneak away. The Sky High military would attract everyone's attention. Nobody would care about him. As for the fate of the Sky High military, Luli didn't care. Few of the wandering bandits were good people. Luli didn't care about their lives. He used the trace of the Great Path and kept a low profile. In the mountains, there were many scouts going around to check on the Sky High military. Luli used the trace of the Great Path to sense them. After flying for half a day, Luli arrived at the city at the foot of the mountain at dawn. He didn't sell the materials in the city. Instead, he teleported away. There were 700 to 800 million divine stones in those interspatial rings, enough for them to teleport far away. He would find a chance to sell the treasures later. Luli teleported again and again. It was a peaceful journey. After several days, he returned to the small city. Phew. Luli was relieved to see Qin Zhan and Gan Lin with psychic power. He put on a big smile. Robbery was the fastest way to make money. If they had to rely on normal means, the 3 of them wouldn't be able to make that much even if they worked hard for 100 years. Luli. Qin Zhan and Gan Lin sensed it. They came out in delight. Luli said he would be gone for a couple of months. They didn't expect that he would be back so soon. Seeing Luli's smile, they were even more excited. Qin Zhan asked, "Did you gain a lot this time?" "Not bad. We should have more than 1 billion divine stones." Luli grinned and walked in with them. Activating the inhibition formation in the room, Luli took out many interspatial rings. One by one, the rings glowed. Weapons and armors appeared, piling up in the hall. "Take your pick," Luli waved his hand and said. "Take whatever you like. If you don't, I will sell them all later." Both of them were disciples of major families at the second heaven. They were experienced and knowledgeable. Even so, they were taken aback by the treasures Luli took out. Many of them were of the same level as the Tower of Immortal Demon. They were valuable. Qin Zhan and Gan Lin looked at each other and made their choices. They didn't refuse Luli's offer. They didn't want to be a burden to Luli. They chose an armor and a weapon. Luli put away the rest. Then, he took out some masks and said, "Choose a mask and change your appearance. Let's hurry up and see if we can go across the land of Ziyang directly." Okay. They chose a mask and changed their appearance. Luli asked, "Do you want to go into the interspatial artifact? Or do you want to teleport with me?" "Let's go together," Qin Zhan grinned and said, "We have recovered a bit. We are bored to death. Let's teleport together." "Sure, let's go together." Luli waved his hand and led them to the teleportation formation. At the teleportation formation, they handed over the divine stones and began to teleport. For months. Chapter 23-25. 4.5 months later, Luli, Qin Zhan and Ganlin arrived at the westernmost part of the land of Ziyang. They were in a huge city by the sea called the City of Magic Music. The city was built on a huge cliff. From inside the city, they could hear the sound of the waves hitting the cliff. There seemed to be a special melody to the sound of the waves, which made people feel comfortable and at ease in their souls. This was how the City of Melody came to be. At first, there was no city here. Later on, someone found something special about this place. A powerful family built a city here and in the end, it became the main city of a territory. This was the westernmost part of the land of Ziyang and the largest port to the chilly winterland. The business here was the most prosperous and it was one of the largest cities in the west. Luli and the other two had been walking around in the city for many times. They were getting dizzy. This city was at least 100 times larger than the Asmodean city on the Omen Island. The population here could reach more than 100 million. There were all kinds of strange races. Fourth Tribulation warriors were as numerous as the hairs on a cow. The attire here was exotic. The women were dressed so sexy that Qin Zhan could not take his eyes off of them. The three of them had been walking around in the city for 4 days. It was not that they wanted to enjoy the scenery or anything. They were looking for ways to make money. Luli didn't have many divine stones left. He had sold all the treasures he got from the Storm Mountain. This was the result of some unremarkable treasures being sold for a high price. Otherwise, the three of them would not have been able to teleport over. Luli only had a few million divine stones left. It was impossible for him to go to the chilly winterland. There was an ocean between the land of Ziyang and the chilly winterland, the Ocean of Melody. Although this sea was not particularly vast, it was very chaotic. Nobody could control the situation between the two lands. Those with bigger fists were the ones in the right. There were many warriors at the peak of the Fourth Tribulation there. Many old demons were causing trouble there. If Luli and the others flew over, it would take them more than a year. What could happen to the three of them when they were floating on the sea for a year? Nobody could predict. It would be faster if they took the Godspeed boat. But if they took the Godspeed boat, they would die even faster. Such treasures would be targeted as soon as they entered the ocean. If 1 or 2 old demons came, they would have nowhere to run. Neither of these two paths would work. Hence, there was only one option left, and that was to take the Divine Sound Territory's super battleship over. This kind of super warship could carry a few thousand people at a time, and its speed was very fast. Although it couldn't compare to the Godspeed boat, its speed could compare to the peak of the Fourth Tribulation. It would only take 3 months to cross the sea. It didn't matter how long or short it was. The most important thing was safety. The leader of the Divine Sonar Territory was not particularly powerful, but he was from the Celestial Dipper Great Thearka's clan. Although this clansman wasn't particularly close, he was still a clansman of the Great Emperor. Because the business here was especially prosperous, this overlord would contribute a lot of resources to the Great Emperor's family every year, so the Great Emperor made an exception and spoke. The people of the Divine Sound Ocean were not allowed to attack the warships of the Divine Sound Territory. Otherwise, he would send people to kill them. since a great emperor had spoken, who would dare to not give face? In this world, the great emperors were the strongest experts. The words of the great emperors were very powerful. No one dared to disrespect them. Over the years, no one had dared to stop the Divine Sound Territory's worship. They had always been very safe. There was a price to pay for safety. To board the Divine Sound Territory's warships was expensive. One person would have to pay 200 million divine stones. Luli and the other two would have to pay 600 million divine stones. Luli wouldn't be able to afford so many divine stones unless he sold all the treasures he had. Otherwise, regular treasures and materials wouldn't be enough. Luli was regretting at the moment. If he had known this would happen, he would have robbed more forces at the Stormy Mountain. The Divine Sound Territory was very stable. It was the territory of the great emperor's family. The law and order were good. There were no roving bandits. Therefore, Luli had nowhere to rob. How many divine stones could he earn by robbing some weak warriors? Robbing a major family? That was unless he did it in the city. Many major families here had connections with the families of the lords. On the off chance that the great emperor's family was enraged, the three of them would be doomed. Therefore, the three of them wandered around in the city, looking for ways to earn divine stones. Otherwise, they wouldn't know how to cross the sea. They wandered around for a few days and found several ways to earn divine stones, but none of them were ideal. The first was to do manual labor, working for the Divine Sound Territory. Of course, there was no future in this. After a few years of work, they wouldn't be able to earn tens of millions of divine stones. The second was to do dangerous manual labor. This way they could earn more, but it was risky. That being said, to earn 600 million divine stones would take more than half a year. The third way was to become an assassin. Wherever there was light, there would be darkness. Assassins would always exist. In the Divine Sound Territory, nobody dared to do anything out in the open. There were too many major families here, and all kinds of interests were involved. Once there was a dispute, how could they deal with it? Either they could make use of the forces behind the scenes, or they had to resort to underhanded means. Assassins were a good way to do that. After all, even if the assassin was caught, it would have nothing to do with them. If they could assassinate someone important, they would make a fortune. This way, they could earn divine stones quickly. If they dared to take on a big job, they could earn hundreds of millions or even billions of divine stones by assassinating someone important. Naturally, this path was also very difficult to traverse. It was too dangerous. One misstep and they would lose their lives. Even if they could complete the mission, they would not be able to escape if the target's family learned of their whereabouts and identities. Let's go back first. Luli waved his hand and the three of them went back to a tavern. The three of them stayed in a small tavern, which was low-key and comfortable. Qin sat on the side and drank in low spirit. Gan Lin thought about it and said, "Let's go to the Black Blood Abyss. It's okay to be tired. We will have enough divine stones in half a year." Gan Lin was talking about the second plan. This plan was relatively safer. It would take a little more time, but it would not be as dangerous. Luli shook his head and said, "No, the Black Blood Abyss is full of traps. We don't have to look into it. Just think about it and you can tell that it is a mess. We might not be able to get out if we go in. That is a place shared by 3 families. There are too many dirty things going on. I don't want my fate to be in someone else's hands." When Luli was at the Valley of Ghosts, something happened and he was left with no way out. He didn't want to repeat the same mistake. If something were to happen in there, he would be a beast in a cage at the mercy of others. Qin looked up and asked, "You want to be an assassin?" "Yes." Luli nodded and said, "Assassins here can pick their own targets. I am going to pick 1 or 2 good ones. As long as we leave as soon as we get what we want and our identities are not exposed, it will be fine. If there is a very good target, we can kill one and leave after the job is done. Once and for all." "Well, Chapter 23-26. Being an assassin had always been a high-risk profession, especially in a world where experts were everywhere. Why would anyone hire an assassin who could be easily killed? The amount of God's stones spent represented how difficult or risky it would be to kill that person. The higher the price, the greater the difficulty and risk. If Luli wanted to get hundreds of millions of divine stones in one go, the person he had to kill must be powerful, have a powerful background, or have some special factors. Otherwise, the employer would not have wasted so many God's stones. Qin Zhan and Luli didn't say much. They knew Luli's temper. Once he had decided on something, not even 9 bulls could change his mind. However, Luli's idea was not wrong. It was easier to go in than to get out of the black blood abyss. If something happened, the 3 of them would have nowhere to run and could only wait for death in there. All right, let's do it. Qin Zhan nodded and added, Luli, go and see if there are any good quests later. The 2 of us will work with you. Luli nodded. After thinking for an hour, he walked out of the castle and headed toward the southern part of the city. He had found out about an assassin organization. Not only was this organization located in Divine Sonar City, but it also had branches in all the main cities. It was a large organization that spanned across the entire third heaven. Hand of Darkness. This organization was very famous in the third heaven. However, they would not personally send people to assassinate. Instead, they would only issue missions and provide information. The assassins who carried out the missions were all voluntary. It was precisely because the assassins of this organization were not their own people that they were able to exist for such a long time. Otherwise, with so many important figures being assassinated every year, they would have long been destroyed by the joint forces of the various major forces. At the very least, it was impossible for them to openly establish a branch in the main city. At the end of the day, they were just a medium, helping the employer to build a bridge between the killer and the employer. Of course, this assassin organization didn't dare to accept some missions, such as assassinating a great emperor's descendant. If they dared to accept such missions, they wouldn't be long from destruction. Luli walked to the south side of the city and found a castle. This castle didn't have a plaque, but there was a black skeletal hand carved on the door. The entire street looked gloomy because of this castle. Luli put on his cloak and walked in, even though he felt like he was hiding something. After he walked in, he found that there was no one inside. There were only 2 corridors with different markings on them. A dagger was engraved on the left corridor, while a godstone was engraved on the right corridor. Luli understood at a glance. He walked into the corridor of the dagger and found 3 side halls at the end of the path. There were also markings on the side hall. This time there were words written on it. The words on the left were basic, the middle was intermediate, and the furthest right was super. This was probably the division of quest. Luli thought about it and knocked on the intermediate door. He pushed the door open and walked in. There was nothing inside, only a table, and behind it sat a skinny old man in a black robe. The old man raised his head and looked at Luli. There was no emotion in his eyes as he calmly asked, "You want to take an intermediate quest?" Luli nodded and said, "I want to take a mission with a reward of 600 million divine stones." 600 million? This time, the old man's expression changed. He raised his eyebrows and asked, "Are you sure?" The old man didn't say it clearly, but his meaning was clear. He was asking if Luli had the ability. Luli smiled and said, "No one would joke around with their own life. I wouldn't be so bored as to come here to play." The old man nodded but still said, "Prove it to me." The old man released a ray of Xian energy to activate the inhibition formation in the hall. Luli took out his flying sword. The sword glowed and a surge of energy spread out. Luli asked, "Is it enough?" "No." The old man shook his head. Luli had no choice but to let out Phantom and asked again, "Is it enough?" "Still not enough. If you want to take a mission with a reward of tens of millions of divine stones, then it is enough. The old man shook his head again. Luli had to let out Spectre King. The old man's eyes glowed as he said, "It is enough now." After Luli put away Spectre King and Phantom, the old man took out a file and flipped through it. After a while, he said, "There are 2 quests with a reward of 600 million to 1 billion divine stones nearby. Take a look." Luli took over the 2 files. It was evident that the files had been processed. Some information was not displayed. Luli could only see some simple information. The first was to assassinate a family patriarch of a nearby territory, a warrior at the later stage of the 4th Tribulation Realm. The reward was 1 billion divine stones. The second was to wipe out a force with 4 warriors at the middle stage of the 4th Tribulation Realm, 5 at the initial stage of the 4th Tribulation Realm, and thousands of warriors. The reward was 800 million divine stones. Divine stones are not easy to earn. Luli curled his lips. Divine stones were hard to earn. Kill a warrior at the later stage of the 4th Tribulation Realm? A family patriarch of a major family? Luli would not only have to deal with the family patriarch, but also the patriarchs of the family. Therefore, Luli didn't consider the first task at all. Even though it was just one person, it was much more difficult than wiping out a force. What was more, he had to find the right opportunity. Maybe he would have to wait for a year or 2. He did not have the time to waste. Then he had to consider the second task. Luli read the introduction of the second task carefully. He didn't miss any information. Then he asked, "Is there any more information about the second task? I will give it to you after you accept the task. This task requires a deposit of 1 million divine stones." The old man said, "If you can't complete the task in a year, the deposit will be gone." 1 million divine stones. Luli understood. He thought for a while and took out 1 million divine stones from his interspatial ring. He handed it over and said, "I will take this task." The old man took over the divine stones and scanned the file. The hidden information was revealed. He handed over another jade talisman and said, "There is an intelligence connection for this task. If you go to the Tianyan city near the task, you can go to the Tea House of Books with this jade talisman. You will be able to get the latest information about the target. After you complete the task, you can come to me to claim the reward. The reward will be given according to the degree of completion. If you cannot kill the leader, you won't get any divine stones. We have professionals who will verify it right away." "No problem." Luli was about to leave when the old man shook his head and said, "Read the file first. You cannot take it with you." Luli stopped and began to read carefully. He memorized all the information and then returned the case file to her. He walked out and strolled around the city. After confirming that no one was following him, he returned to the inn. "How did it go?" Qin Zhan and Gan Lin came up to him. Luli said with a bitter smile, "I took a task, but it is difficult. I have to think about it and see how I can complete it." Luli said it casually, as if it wasn't difficult at all. However, only he himself knew. The chance of success was only 50%, which meant that there was a 50% chance that he would die there. Chapter 23-27. The target was not the Melody territory, but the nearby Water Ant territory. That force was not well known. Many people here didn't even know about it. It was called the Palace of Black Moon. The force was not based in the city, but in a mountain. The force was low-key and the warriors rarely came out. But this force made many smaller forces nearby fearful. Even the governor of a nearby city didn't dare to provoke the force. The master of the Palace of Black Moon was a woman, a twisted witch. She was proficient in all kinds of evil skills and had a deep understanding of sacred glyph. She was fond of male pets and her methods were vicious. Those that fell into her hands would suffer miserably. The Palace of Black Moon had 3 warriors at the middle stage of the 4th tribulation and 5 at the initial stage. 6 of them were females, some young and some old. Their personalities were twisted and twisted. Some time ago, the old witch captured a young master and tortured him to death. The young master's family didn't dare to seek revenge. They had to sell their family's assets and come to the Hand of Darkness to issue missions. The old witch was not particularly powerful, but her methods were vicious and she was proficient in evil skills. Powerful warriors could kill her in one move. That being said, the old witch had been living a comfortable life. Her surname was Yu and the Yu family was a powerful force here. The old witch's family didn't like her or else she wouldn't have created the Palace of Black Moon. Even though the Yu family didn't like her, she was still a member of the Yu family. If she was killed, the Yu family would look into it. Therefore, the major families and powerful warriors nearby didn't dare to touch her even though they didn't like her. The information was in the intelligence. Luli said he had a 50-50 chance of winning because he was worried about the old witch's evil skills. He wasn't afraid of the Palace of Black Moon's sacred glyph. Several warriors at the initial stage of the 4th tribulation could pose no threat to him. As for the 3 at the middle stage of the 4th tribulation, he was confident that he could deal with them. What was more, the Palace of Black Moon was not far away from the base camp of the Yu family. If Luli killed everyone and the Yu family found out, he wouldn't be able to make it back to the mystical Sonar City. Luli had to wipe out the Palace of Black Moon and then go back to the mystical Sonar City at once. He would claim the reward and leave on a super battleship. Gon Lin. Luli thought about it and said, "Go and find out when the super battleships of the realm of Mystic will depart and how long it will be." Gon Lin went out to gather information as soon as Luli gave the order. Luli said to Qinzhan, "Go and find out about the Yu family. Focus on the relationship between the Yu family and the Shrine of Melody. If they are on good terms with the Shrine of Melody, then we cannot touch them. Otherwise we will die even if we get on the battleship." "All right." Qinzhan left as well. Luli took out the map and started to study it. He carefully observed the situation around the Palace of Black Moon and started to plan his escape route. Half a day later, Gon Lin returned and reported on the situation of the super battleship. These battleships would go out once a month, and each time there would be 3 of them. Regardless of whether or not there were enough customers, it was basically fixed, and they would go out once a month. 3 ships had set off 6 days ago, and the next batch would have to wait for another 24 days. 24 days? Luli nodded. He had enough time. It would only take him 3 days to teleport over and 6 days to go back and forth. If he couldn't kill them in one night, then the mission would be considered a failure. Therefore, Luli was not in a hurry, nor could he be. He had to make good use of the time. When the mission was completed and he came back, the battleships would be ready to depart as soon as the mission was completed. Another half a day later, Qinzhan came back as well. He had spent more than 100,000 divine stones to find out some accurate information. The Yu family and the Melody region were not on good terms. There was even some resentment between them. It was said that decades ago there was a dispute between the young generation and someone died. Later, the emperor sent someone to mediate because the Yu family was one of the staunch supporters of the emperor. Even though the 2 sides were on the same side, they were not on friendly terms. Luli was relieved. At the very least, when the battleships left, even if the Yu family could find out who he was, the Melody region wouldn't let the battleships go back. "Let's do it." Luli didn't hesitate. He decided to do it right away. He said to Qinzhan and Gon Lin, "You guys stay here. If I don't come back in a month, then it means I am dead. You guys can go on your own." Qinzhan and Gon Lin looked at each other, not knowing what to say. Qinzhan said, "We can't help much, but we can at least support you from the outside." "That's pointless." Luli shook his head and said, "I don't need support. We are brothers and I will not beat around the bush. You will not be of any help to me if you go now. You will distract me. So, just stay here and don't worry. I will try not to be impulsive. If something goes wrong, I would rather not finish the mission and stay alive. Worst comes to worst, we will work here for a few years. Luli patted their shoulders and said, Why are you pulling such long faces? It's not that you are weak. Many people have been cultivating for tens of thousands of years, and they still can't reach your realm. It's just that my opponents are of a higher level. What is there to be upset about? Compared to many people, you are strong enough. Furthermore, my own battle power is actually not that strong. I've only taken in a few beasts and rely on their battle power. All right. The two forced a smile but said nothing more. It was pointless for them to go. It was better to stay here. They wouldn't distract Luli and he would have a better chance of survival. Luli didn't leave in a hurry after he convinced the two. He stayed here. He planned to gather some information for the next few days. The more information he had, the safer he would be. Luli took action after he wandered around in the city for 10 days. He teleported all the way to the Heaven Fortune City near the Black Moon Palace. He went to the bookstore and got the latest information about the Black Moon Palace. Recently, the Black Moon Palace did something evil again. They kidnapped a young master of a small family, and the young master died on the 5th day. He was nailed to the cliff behind the Black Moon Palace. This young master was famous nearby. He was an elegant young master with a good character. He was humble and kind. He was respected and liked by many. Maybe it was because this young master was so famous that he suddenly disappeared one day. His family immediately sent people to search for him but to no avail. 5 days later, he was found nailed to the cliff behind the Black Moon Palace. Also, this young master was naked. There were whip marks and tie marks on his body. Clearly, he had been tortured. It was too horrible to look at. This incident caused public anger. Many of the nearby small clans were furious, but no one dared to act recklessly. The Black Moon Palace was the overlord nearby. Nobody could afford to offend them. That family didn't even dare to collect the body of their young master. At the moment, the body was still nailed to the cliff. The old witch was in the Black Moon Palace recently. Luli didn't stay idle. He didn't act rashly either. Instead, he wandered around nearby and investigated secretly. He passed by the cliff behind and saw a man hanging on the cliff. Many parts of the man's body were badly scratched by the goshawk. She really is the old witch. Vicious. Chapter 23-28. It was a dark night. There was no moonlight and the wind was strong. It was a murderous night. Luli took action tonight. Coming out from the Tianyun city, Luli snuck into the vicinity of the Palace of Black Moon. There was only one building in the Palace of Black Moon, a huge castle. There were no sentries on the mountain. There were only several teams of warriors patrolling outside the castle. There are divine glyphs. Luli could sense many divine glyphs as he snuck into the mountain. That old witch of the Palace of Black Moon must have a profound knowledge of divine glyphs. If it were not for the trace of Tao, Luli would not have noticed many divine glyphs. Blood Fairy, go and check. Lead the way. Luli's hand glowed as Blood Fairy came out. Soon, he received many messages. Blood Fairy led Luli forward without touching any divine glyphs. An hour later, Luli was 1,000 miles away from the Palace of Black Moon. He sensed there were teams of warriors patrolling. Luli did not rush over. He told Blood Fairy to set up some nearby while he built some one-way teleportation formations. In case something went wrong, he could dash into the teleportation formation and teleport himself to a place millions of miles away. 4 teleportation formations were built and Blood Fairy built some fields of divine glyph. Making sure everything was ready, Luli flew over quietly. He was 30 miles away from the castle when he made some noise. Who is it? A team of warriors was alarmed. They checked with psychic power. Luli was in a panic. He ran down the mountain at once. Thief, that team of warriors could tell that Luli was only at the second tribulation realm. They thought Luli was a thief sneaking into the palace of Black Moon. That team of warriors did not sound the alarm. They all went after Luli, ready to capture him. He was courting death by coming to the palace of Black Moon. The 6 of them dashed away. Luli ran like a rabbit in fear. He did not move too fast. He managed to keep up with the others. He ran down the mountain at once. He slowed down so that the others could catch up with him. The 6 of them were warriors that had passed through 3 trials. They followed him closely. They were enraged that Luli dared to sneak into the palace of Black Moon. They wanted to take Luli back and interrogate him. After more than 3,000 miles, Luli felt that the palace of Black Moon could no longer sense him. He suddenly stopped. He turned around and waited for the 6 people to charge at him. The fear on his face disappeared and was replaced with a calm expression. He looked at the 6 people as if they were ants. The 6 of them were shocked, but then they flew over angrily. Luli's stare had enraged them. They didn't want to interrogate Luli anymore. They wanted to kill Luli directly. Whoosh! Luli took the initiative to attack. He sped up and reached the 6 warriors in an instant. In the blink of an eye, all 6 of them were sent flying, and all of them were severely injured. Whoosh! Luli dashed away and pulled the 6 of them into the separated heaven bead. He didn't interrogate them directly. Instead, he sealed their divine power and took their spatial rings. Finally, he summoned countless void worms. The 6 of them screamed as they were tortured to death. Luli stood on the side without saying a word. To the 6 of them, he looked like a demon. Tell me about the Black Moon Palace. After a while, Luli stopped the void worms and walked to the first warrior. That warrior glared at Luli with hatred but said nothing. Bang! Luli stomped on the warrior, breaking all his ribs. Then, he kicked the warrior away. The void worms went on biting him. That warrior was in so much pain that he wished he was dead again. It's your turn. Luli walked to the second warrior and said coldly. That warrior was hesitating. Luli lifted his foot and stomped on the warrior's head. That warrior said in terror, I will talk, I will. Bang! Luli did not stop. The warrior's head was crushed and he died immediately. Luli said coldly, I gave you a chance but you didn't take it. It is too late. He walked over slowly to the third warrior. This time, he said nothing and only stared at the warrior. That warrior's forehead was covered in cold sweat. He made up his mind and said, I will talk. Lord, I will tell you whatever you want to know. I just hope that you can spare my life. You are all small fries. My goal is to kill your master. Luli waved his hand and said, It doesn't matter to me whether I kill you or not. It is up to you whether you can live or not. We will talk, we will. The rest of the warriors didn't hesitate anymore. They all crawled up and looked at Luli in fear. Good. Luli nodded with satisfaction and then began to ask more questions. The situation inside the Black Moon Palace was complicated. The more he knew, the more likely he would be to succeed. Buzzing, an hour later, Luli came out. He had learned a lot of information but he didn't relax. Instead, he was solemn. The warriors didn't know much about the old witch of the Black Moon Palace. All they knew was that she was powerful and knew many evil skills. Luli learned the general situation of the other warriors of the Black Moon Palace from the warriors. More importantly, he learned that the divine runes in the Black Moon Palace were horrifying. The entire Black Moon Palace was covered with countless divine runes. The castle itself was a weapon of mass destruction. Blood Fairy could crack the divine runes. However, as soon as she moved, the old witch would know. Before Blood Fairy could crack the divine runes, the old witch would come out. It was said that the castle could fly away as a whole. If the old witch could not defeat the divine runes, Luli would have to rush into the castle and fight. By then, the divine runes would be of great use to restrict Luli's movements. Lure her out and kill her. I must be fast. I cannot let her get into the castle. Luli made up his mind. He snuck into the mountain again and said to Blood Fairy, "Blood Fairy, can you build a divine rune? I will lure them out and you can trap them for a while with the rune." "Sure. But this divine inscription dojo can't be too big," Blood Fairy replied. "Strong people can break it open." "Never mind then, if the divine rune plaza was too small, not even Luli himself would be safe. Besides, the old witch and the others were strong. What if the divine rune plaza was destroyed in one move? Luli thought about it and said, "Later, when the fight starts, sneak into the castle and find a way to control the divine runes. The first thing to do after that is to seal off the castle. Do not let anyone in. If you cannot control the divine runes, then destroy the divine runes inside and destroy all the divine runes. If something goes wrong, go hide nearby and I will come for you later." Okay. Blood Fairy would carry out Luli's orders to the fullest. She snuck into the ground. Luli flew up as well. His energy spread out as he yelled, "You old witch, come out. I will cut off your head to enforce justice." Whoosh, 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 Luli's words were like poking a hornet's nest. Many warriors came out from the two gates of the castle. Many powerful psychic powers locked onto Luli. Space seemed to be frozen at this moment. Chapter 23-29. The Palace of Black Moon was the overlord in this area. Because of the relationship between their master and the Yu family, no other forces dared to provoke them. Therefore, the warriors of the Palace of Black Moon were proud. Usually they were the ones bullying others. Who dared to bully them? Today, however, someone had come to their door, uttered arrogant words and called their master an old witch? This made the warriors of the Palace of Black Moon furious and scared. They were afraid that they would suffer because of their master's wrath. Therefore, Luli's words had attracted at least 3,000 warriors, including 4 Fourth Tribulation warriors. The other Fourth Tribulation warriors also used psychic power to check. When they realized that the one who came to provoke was a Second Tribulation warrior, they were stunned. This man must be out of his mind. He must be tired of living. Buzzing, buzzing, Luli paid no attention to them. The distant heaven bead kept glowing. He let out all the worms of the void, hundreds of billions of them. The worms of the void covered up the sky, whooshing and attacking at once. The worms of the void were fast, which caught people's attention. Many took out their weapons and began to attack. They were ready to destroy the low-level worms and then kill Luli. The worms are intangible. Countless attacks flew over, but they passed through the void worm and didn't cause any substantial damage to it. By the time they realized what was going on, many worms had entered their bodies. Of course, some had special skills that could shake up space and knock away the worms of the void. Some could kill the worms of the void. Unfortunately, there were too many of them. They were like swarms of bees everywhere they could find. Soon, someone cried out miserably. Most of the warriors could suppress the worms of the void, but they were occupied. They had no chance to help Luli. Whoosh! Luli flew to the distance. The 4 Fourth Tribulation warriors came over with a glint of coldness in their eyes. The Fourth Tribulation warriors were so fast that the worms of the void could not catch up with them. Naturally, they could not hurt them. 3 of the 4 were at the initial stage of the Fourth Tribulation and 1 at the middle stage. The one at the middle stage was a lady. Old as she was still pretty. She stared at Luli with excitement in her eyes. She stuck her tongue out and said with a smile, "Little brother, don't run away. Let me take care of you." Seeing the glint in the eyes of the middle-aged woman, Luli felt like throwing up. He flew for 1,000 miles, but because he deliberately slowed down, he was soon caught up. The middle-aged Lady Sue moved like a ghost. She chased after Luli with strange footwork. She reached out her hand and gently grabbed at Luli. This was a warrior at the middle stage of the fourth tribulation. Luli could not afford to be careless. The separation bead glowed. First, a weapon came out. Then, the bead glowed again. Phantom King and Ghost came out at the same time. Luli took out a weapon, but the old lady did not care. Therefore, when the heaven separation bead glowed again, she did not let her guard down. It was not until the Phantom King and Ghost shadow came out that she was startled. Roar! The spectre monarch roared into the sky, and a fierce aura spread in all directions, causing the third tribulation martial artists in the distance to shiver all over. The middle-aged woman was also trembling in fear. The Phantom King's aura was simply too violent and violent. Buzzing, as soon as the ghost shadow came out, he turned into a gust of chilly wind and entered the middle-aged woman's body. Then the spectre monarch dashed forward and reached at the middle-aged woman with his sharp claws. Bang! The demonic soul in the middle-aged woman's soul was not strong. Under the joint efforts of the ghost shadow and the spectre monarch, she was killed in an instant. Her body was torn in half and her interspatial ring fell off automatically. Run! The three warriors at the initial stage of the fourth tribulation were frightened. They knew very well how powerful the middle-aged woman was. If she could be killed in an instant, how could the three of them stand a chance? Woo woo! Ghost Shadow and the Spectre Monarch flew out from the body and each went after one warrior. The three of them were fast, but they were not as fast as the Spectre Monarch and the Spectre Monarch. Soon, the two warriors were caught up with. The outcome was sealed. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh! The moment the middle-aged woman was killed, hundreds of warriors flew out from the castle. 5 of them were warriors at the fourth tribulation. Luli checked with psychic power and was relieved. The old witch had come out. What Luli needed was for the old witch to come out and hunt him down so that he could find a way to kill her. When the old witch was dead, the others would be easy to deal with. Bang! The Spectre Monarch tore apart a warrior at the fourth tribulation. Soon, the Spectre Monarch made his move as well. The soul of a warrior at the fourth tribulation collapsed and his body fell to the ground. Come back! Luli controlled the Spectre Monarch and the Spectre Monarch to come back. The old witch came with all the warriors at the fourth tribulation. Even though she was called the old witch, she didn't look good at all. Instead, she was more like a beautiful lady. She stared at Luli with coldness and surprise in her eyes. Dozens of miles away from Luli, she stopped and asked, "Who are you? Why are you targeting me?" Luli wouldn't do anything if the enemies didn't do anything. The old witch was calm and not in a hurry. Luli was afraid that if he made a move now, the old witch would run away in fear. "You don't have the right to know who I am." Luli provoked the old witch on purpose. "Old witch, you have done many evil things and are heartless. I heard about you when I was passing by, so I decided to kill you. Are you going to kill yourself, or do I have to do it? If I do it, I don't think I will leave you with a whole body." "You talk big." The old witch was angry, but she suppressed it and said coldly, "I am from the Yu family. Aren't you afraid that the Yu family will be angry if you kill me?" "Ha ha!" Luli sneered and said, "I have great respect for the Yu family. But I don't think the Yu family will recognize a wicked witch like you. Otherwise, you wouldn't have founded the Palace of Black Moon. If the Yu family wants to kill me because of you, then I will be disappointed. I will be laughed at by the entire western region." "Cut the crap." Luli waved his saber and said, "Old witch, I will give you one last chance. Hang your neck and kill yourself. I will leave you with a whole body. If I do it, I will turn you into minced meat." Courting death. The old witch was enraged. She shouted, "All of you do it. Tear this bastard apart." A black furnace appeared in the old witch's hand. She suddenly raised it up into the air. The furnace grew bigger in the air, and the lid was opened. Dark red powder appeared all over the sky and was blown towards Luli. Poisonous fog! Luli's expression changed. He could see many strange poisonous insects in the poisonous fog. He didn't dare to touch them. He put away the Spectre King's ghostly shadow and took out the Godspeed boat. His body flashed and entered it, flying into the distance. You want to run? Go. The old witch was furious. She chased after him with several warriors of the fourth tribulation. Luli didn't let the god boat go at its top speed. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to catch up. He controlled the god boat at a speed similar to the old witch's. He was faster than the others. He did it on purpose. He wanted to lure the old witch and the others away. He couldn't let them enter the castle. He controlled the speed so that the old witch would be alone. When he was about to kill the old witch, the others wouldn't be able to help. Chapter 23:30. It was midnight at the Tianyun city, but there were still many people in some places, especially the taverns and theaters. Whoosh! A sharp sound pierced through the air, alerting countless people in the city. Many people used psychic power to check, and the city became lively. They found a very familiar person, the old witch. The heavenly fortune city was near the Black Moon Palace, and the old witch would sometimes pass through the vicinity when she went out. Many people would discover her, and there was even one time when the old witch came to the city and killed someone in public. Everyone naturally had a deep impression of her. Old witch! Shoo, do you want to die? How dare you shout like this? Yeah, if you want to die, don't drag us down. Call her Master of the Palace of Black Moon. The Master of the Palace of Black Moon is here in person? Who is she hunting? What is that small battleship? It is so fast. Let's go and see. This is big news. Someone go and check it out. Heavenly Fate City immediately became lively. Countless scouts were dispatched. The old witch of the Black Moon Palace held the hearts of countless people. Countless people in the city also began to spread the news, passing on the situation here to the nearby large clans. Luli did this on purpose. He flew over the Tianyun city for several purposes. First, he wanted to lure out some scouts and some powerful warriors with ulterior motive. This would be of some help to him later in the battle and distract the old witch. Second, he wanted to show the people of the Dark Hand that he was on the move. Most importantly, he wanted to use other people's mouths to shut up the Yu family. In this way, when he killed the old witch, the Yu family might not dare to hunt him down. Sometimes, public opinion was important. As a super family, the Yu family must care about their reputation. When they passed by the Sky Fortune City, Luli began to roar, using the dragon's roar divine skill so that the entire Sky Fortune City could hear him. Old witch, you come from the prestigious Yu family, but you are devoid of conscience and have committed many evil deeds. You constantly abduct young and handsome men, doing dirty and despicable things. Have you ever thought that you will bring shame to the Yu family? The Yu clan is a famous clan in the western region with an illustrious reputation. What you've done is ruining the Yu clan's tens of thousands of years of prestige. Old witch, do you know how many people around here hate you to the bone? Do you know how many people want to cut you into pieces? Do you know that all the evil you've done will be punished by the heavens? Old witch, today, I will execute justice on behalf of the heavens and kill you to avenge the deaths of those innocent young men. Even if the Yu clan hunts me down after this matter, and cuts me into 1,000 pieces, I will still have a clear conscience. Luli shouted again and again. His voice shook heaven and earth, echoing in an area with a radius of hundreds of miles. The city was in an uproar. Countless people who were sleeping or cultivating were alarmed, and countless people rose into the air. The old witch was indeed notorious, and countless people hated her to the bone. However, these things could only be said in secret, Who dared to say it out loud? Now, Luli had publicized the evil deeds of the old witch to the public and scolded her in front of the entire city. How could this not cause a stir in the city? The old witch was so angry that she almost went crazy. She increased her speed and chased after the Godspeed boat. Luli controlled the Godspeed boat and sped up. Soon, the man and the boat flew into the distance. It's about time. Luli felt that it was about time to leave the Tianyun city for hundreds of thousands of miles. It was not that he couldn't fly forward, but he was afraid that the old witch would wake up from her anger. When a person lost his mind, it was the best time to kill him. The rest of the fourth tribulation warriors of the Black Moon Palace were left behind. It would probably take them at least the time for half an incense stick to burn to get here. In a battle between powerful warriors, one breath could determine life and death. If Luli couldn't kill the old witch in the time it took for half an incense stick to burn, then he wouldn't be able to kill this person. He had better run as far as he could. Luli suddenly controlled the Godspeed boat to stop. Not only did he stop, but he also started to fly backwards. The old witch who was chasing after him immediately revealed a ghastly killing intent in her eyes. She waved her hand and the stove flew up again. At the same time, she took out a small seal and smashed it towards the Godspeed boat. The old witch's intention was clear. She wanted to use the seal to smash the Godspeed boat and then let the pink poisonous fog envelop Luli. She believed that as long as Luli was enveloped by the pink poisonous fog, his life would be in her hands. She was overthinking. Luli had already turned the Godspeed boat around. It was Blood Fairy who was controlling the Godspeed boat. Later on, she told Luli how to control the patterns inside. Now, Luli could control the Godspeed boat as if it was his own arm. The Godspeed boat moved in an arc and sped up as well. It glided past the old witch's left side. When it passed by the old witch, Luli let out Phantom. Buzzing, like a gust of wind, Phantom reached the old witch and entered her body in an instant. But the old witch was not afraid. Her expressions didn't change. Buzzing, 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 as Luli flew over, many wind warcraft came out. At once, a gale sprang up. Luli controlled the Godspeed boat to circle around the old witch. One wind warcraft after another was released. All of them used skills related to wind. The power of the wind was gathered from all directions, and all of it wrapped around the old witch, greatly reducing her speed. For the first time, she was worried because she knew the wind warcraft. Attack! Luli ordered. Some of the wind warcraft began to shoot out beams of light. Luli knew that the Phantom King would not be able to kill the old witch. He had to rely on a large number of wind warcraft. If the old witch was injured, then it would not be difficult to kill her. Buzzing, the old witch's ring glowed as she took out a black ball. Then, she dashed into the ball. Dozens of beams of light hit the ball. But the ball was so solid that it could not be penetrated. This old witch has so many treasures. Luli was troubled. If dozens of beams of light could not crack the ball, then no amount of attacks would help. Where did the old witch get so many treasures? Did the Yu family give them to her? I will have to take the risk. Luli made up his mind. Reinforcements would arrive soon. He must kill the old witch as soon as possible or he would fail in this mission. Whoosh! He told the wind demon beast to stop controlling it and controlled the Godspeed boat to fly over. After arriving near the sphere, he released the Ghost King. Roar, roar! The Phantom King bellowed and scratched at the ball. However, the ball glowed. The Phantom King's horrifying strength could not tear it apart. Buzzing, Luli threw caution to the wind. He dashed out and took out a piece of black iron plate. He poured divine energy into it and smashed at the ball. Boom! This time, the ball could not stand it anymore. It fell apart and the old witch came out. Her eyes were filled with shock. She stared at Luli and said, "Holy weapon shard, you have a holy weapon shard." Roar, roar! The Phantom King rushed over to attack the old witch. The old witch was at the middle stage of the fourth tribulation, and she had been famous for a long time. Naturally, she was fast. She paid no attention to the Phantom King. A blue arrowhead appeared in her hand. With a shrill sound, she stabbed at Lu Li's head. Holy weapon fragment. Lu Li sensed her energy and complained to himself. The old witch had too many treasures, including pieces of emperor weapon. He reacted quickly. He sent out his flying sword and stabbed at the old witch. At the same time, he took out a shield which was transformed from the cauldron of 1,000 transformations. Bang! Chapter 23:31. The Phantom King's claws viciously clawed at the old witch's left shoulder, shattering it. At the same time, the flying sword pierced through the old witch's chest and came out from her back. Die! The old witch didn't care at all. She continued to stab at Lu Li. At the same time, some evil energy came out from her and enveloped Lu Li. The old witch was not a good-for-nothing who was under the protection of her family. She founded the Palace of Black Moon all by herself and had been doing evil for years. She survived, not only because of the Yu family, but also because of her own abilities. She knew very well that she could kill the Phantom Master, but she would have to pay a heavy price. There were wind warcraft all around. In the end, she would lose her life. Therefore, she chose to kill the leader first. When Lu Li died, the beasts would become ownerless. Not all of them would die, but at least they would not attack her anymore. So be it. Let's see who dies first. Lu Li had made up his mind. He was not as fast as the old witch. He could not run away. He had to fight with his life. The old witch had a piece of emperor weapon, but he had a piece of holy weapon. Granted, the old witch's realm was higher, and he might not be able to unleash the full power of the holy weapon, but there was no time to think. Either he or the old witch would die. Phantom, full force. Lu Li yelled in his soul and controlled Phantom to attack with full force. The ghost bead was under Lu Li's control now. It was easy to control the ghost bead. Blood Fairy had told him the trick. In the distance, several warriors of the fourth tribulation of the Palace of Black Moon and scouts from other forces had caught up. They could feel the might of the holy weapon and the emperor weapon from the distance. They could sense that the space over there was trembling violently. What was more, they could sense the might of the wind warcraft and the Phantom Master. There were so many wind warcraft. Boom! A shockwave came from the distance. The space over there was trembling. The horrifying blast swept across, suffocating everyone. Not good. One of the four tribulation experts shouted in fear, "Palace Master has been killed." They were so close that they could use psychic power to see what was going on. They could faintly see. Lu Li and their master bumped into each other. Two powerful relic weapons clashed against each other. Then, the glow in their master's hand died out. Lu Li smashed a ray of light on their master's head. Boom! The Holy Artifact Fragment and the Emperor Artifact Fragment collided. The Holy Artifact Fragment obtained a complete victory. The old witch's arrowhead was smashed into pieces, and her head was also smashed. That being said, Lu Li was not feeling well either. His chest was covered in blood. His muscles, bones, and internal organs were crushed by the horrifying energy. His body bounced back and blood spurted out of his mouth. However, when he saw the old witch's corpse, he revealed a delighted smile. Unfortunately, his face was covered in blood, and his smile looked very ferocious no matter how one looked at it. "He's injured, kill him." The four tribulation warriors were filled with killing intent. They didn't run away. Instead, they dashed toward Lu Li. It was not that they respected the old witch. It was just that if they didn't kill Lu Li, the Yu family would kill them later. Ha ha! Lu Li flew over and put away the old witch's interspatial ring. Unfortunately, the Emperor Artifact Fragment was broken by him. It was not of much use now. He couldn't sell it for many divine stones. The old witch is dead? The scouts nearby were dumbfounded by what they saw. Then they were overjoyed. After all, the death of the old witch had nothing to do with them. This was a piece of good news. Let's go back and send the message. Countless scouts returned to the city and spread this shocking news. It was estimated that in less than a day, everyone in the vicinity would receive this news. This was an exciting piece of good news. Whoosh, the 5 Fourth Tribulation warriors dashed over. Luli was not afraid at all, seeing that they didn't run away. Instead, he was overjoyed. The task had a completion rate. If he could not kill them all, he would not get all the rewards. Walking right into the trap. If they ran away, it would be more difficult for Luli to hunt them down. On the other hand, coming at them would be no different from courting death. Luli didn't take action in a hurry. He swayed and flew down to take out some healing pellets to tend to his wounds. He seemed to be dying. Soon, the 5 warriors came over. When they were close, Luli took out the godly boat and flew away in a blur. The countless wind demonic beasts began to move, and wild gales filled the sky, slowing everyone down. Next, countless streams of light appeared. Whoosh, 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 boom, boom, boom. The 5 began to attack desperately. But how could they fight against more than 100 wind warcraft? Soon, 2 warriors at the initial stage of the 4th tribulation were killed. They were smashed into pieces of flesh and broken limbs. Run, the rest were scared. They might die if they were hunted down by the Yu family, but they would die if they didn't leave now. Even though Luli seemed to be badly injured, his boat was fast. There was no way they could catch up with him. You want to run? Too late. Luli took control of the godly boat and came back. He looked on indifferently. The rest of the warriors were tough and they were capable. One of them killed 2 wind warcraft and managed to escape. Whoosh, Luli flew the godly boat over to where that warrior was. He let out Ghost Shadow and Phantom King. This warrior was slower than Phantom King. With the help of Ghost Shadow, he was no match for Ghost Shadow. Boom! Someone had a yellow spear in his hand. The spear was so powerful that it killed 3 wind warcraft in a row. Unfortunately, he was badly injured. Soon, he was shredded into pieces by the wind warcraft. Hiss, hiss, some of the nearby scouts recognized the wind demon beast and spread the news. All the scouts and martial artists sucked in a breath of cold air. They only heard that a lord caught many wind warcraft to pull his chariot, which was quite a sight. But they didn't expect that the more than 100 wind warcraft could be so powerful. After the time for more than a dozen breaths, everyone was torn to pieces. Luli dashed out and put away the interspatial rings. The powerful warriors of the Palace of Black Moon must have a lot of divine stones and treasures. He could sell them for hundreds of millions of divine stones. Luli put away the wind warcraft and used psychic power to check on the scouts and warriors nearby. Those warriors ran away in fear. Some even knelt to Luli. "Don't be afraid," Luli shouted. "I only kill the wicked, not the innocent. The old witch has done many evil things. Today, I am enforcing justice on behalf of heaven. I am Huang Tianba of the Huang family of the Heaven Tiger leader. If the Yu family wants to avenge these villains, the Huang family will accept your challenge." With that said, Luli flew the godly boat to the Palace of Black Moon. The scouts and warriors left at once to spread the shocking news. "How come the Huang family has such a person?" "Yes, he is so young and he is a second tribulation warrior? Is he a genius of the Huang family? I think the news will spread across the western region in a couple of days. I wonder if the Yu family will take action. The Huang family is a big family at the western region. If they start a war with the Yu family, it will be interesting. Let's not talk about this. Let's go back to the city. Thank God that the old witch is dead. Glory to the Huang family, glory to Huang Tianba." Luli was gone, but the place was still bustling with noise and excitement. The scouts and warriors were rushing back to the city while they were talking in high spirits. Of course, Luli was using a fake name. But he knew the Huang family. He once passed by the Huang family's territory and rested there for 2 days. Chapter 2332. Luli went back to the palace of Black Moon. Blood Fairy was still controlling the castle. The worms of the void were wreaking havoc as well. Many had died. The survivors had fled into the castle. Some were trying their best to suppress the worms of the void. Master, this castle is a piece of treasure. Blood Fairy's message cheered Luli up. Where is the treasure? The material and the patterns. Blood Fairy explained, the material of this castle is special. I think it is similar to that piece of relic iron. If you don't believe me, you can try to attack it. Whoosh, Luli took out his flying sword and stabbed at the castle. The patterns on the castle were not activated yet. Even so, when the flying sword stabbed at the castle, there was a clanging sound and some sparks came out. This is a treasure. Luli was overjoyed. However, because of the sudden attack, many warriors flew out from the castle. They were shocked to see Luli coming back. Run! These soldiers were not stupid. Some of them immediately fled in all directions, while others fled into the castle. Roar, roar! Luli let out Phantom and Spectre and some Wind Warcraft to chase after them. Given the speed of Wind Warcraft, Phantom and Spectre, those warriors would not be able to escape. Bang, bang, bang! Soon, bodies fell to the ground. The 100 warriors that tried to escape were all killed in less than 1,000 miles. Blood Fairy, have you gained control of the patterns here? Luli did not mind the warriors in the castle. As long as the patterns were under his control, the warriors were like caged beasts. He could kill them however he wanted. I did not, Blood Fairy explained, but just now I could control them easily. The core of the patterns is a piece of treasure. Just now, that treasure suddenly became ownerless. Master, did you kill the master of the castle? Yes. Luli nodded. Blood Fairy said, then it is okay. Master, I have full control of the castle. The patterns here are powerful and there are dozens of different patterns. This castle must have had dozens of owners, and the previous owners have also repeatedly refined this castle, setting up layers and layers of divine runes. Now, this castle's defense is super strong. Even a late-stage Fourth Tribulation expert would find it difficult to break through. What? Luli was taken aback. This was just a small castle. Not even warriors at the later stage of the Fourth Tribulation could break it? Blood Fairy wasn't joking. Master, I'm not joking. Blood Fairy said seriously. If you don't believe me, I can activate the glyph. Why don't you have the Wind Demon Beast and Phantom King attack me? Alright. Luli was excited. He called back the Wind Warcraft and the Phantom King at once. The entire castle was glowing with cyan patterns moving around. It was as if the entire castle had come to life, and there were many little azure dragons swimming around inside. Bang, bang, bang. Whoosh, 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 the Phantom King and dozens of wind demonic beasts attacked at the same time, and muffled booms sounded out. The castle trembled slightly, but it was completely unscathed. In fact, not even a single mark was left on it. What a treasure! Luli was overjoyed. This was a treasure with strong defense. If he ran into a powerful warrior, he could at least stay alive for a while by hiding in here. Luli quickly asked another important question. How's the speed? Can this castle fly? It can fly. Blood Fairy replied confidently. We'll have to see how fast it is. Master, you can enter the castle first. Don't worry about the people inside, I've trapped them all. Okay. Luli put away the Phantom King, the Wind Warcraft, and the Phantom King and flew into the castle. After a glare, Luli was teleported to a luxurious hall. Buzzing, following that, the entire castle trembled and soared into the sky, whistling into the distance. The castle was large, at least with a radius of 30 miles. It was like a mountain. There were scouts from different forces nearby. They followed Luli here. At first, they thought it was a mountain that flew up when they saw the castle of Black Moon fly up. That is the castle of Black Moon. It can fly? And the speed. The legend is true. The castle of Black Moon is a piece of treasure. Putting everything else aside, it must be as fast as a warrior at the later stage of the fourth tribulation. It is a pity that Huang Tianba has taken it. He deserves it. If you can kill the old witch, the treasure will be yours. The question is, do you have the ability? The group of people sighed with emotion, but the castle quickly disappeared into the eastern sky. That is quite fast. Lu Li used psychic power to check. He was satisfied. After some thoughts he asked, Blood Fairy, since there are such powerful runes here, can the castle shrink? Of course. Blood Fairy answered with certainty. As a matter of fact, inside the castle is a small space refined by a powerful warrior. It has a radius of at least 300 miles and more than 100,000 rooms. Not only can people live in the rooms, but they can also trap people. There is a powerful maze in here. If you cannot solve the runes by force and you want to go around in circles, you will be trapped here for the rest of your life. Hiss, hiss, Lu Li had been to many dangerous places and experienced many mazes. His eyes were filled with excitement. The treasure was too valuable, just think about it. If he encountered a group of warriors at the middle stage of the fourth tribulation, he would not have to fight them. He could lure them in and trap them all. Eventually, he could kill them one by one. Buzzing, outside, the castle of Black Moon shrank into the size of a rock. After the time for several incense sticks to burn, the castle of Black Moon fell into a valley. Lu Li checked to make sure that nobody was around. He asked, What about the warriors? Can you kill them all? Lu Li did not even bother to kill those low-level warriors. Since there were powerful runes here, he could just kill them. Yes. Blood Fairy gave a simple answer. Lu Li did not worry anymore. He sat in the hall with his legs crossed and took out some healing pellets to treat his wounds. The old witch was dead, and so were the fourth tribulation warriors. Not many of the other warriors escaped. Lu Li had accomplished his mission successfully. The reward of 800 million was in his hands. He could set off at once. What Lu Li needed to do now was to heal his wounds, disguise himself, sneak into the city, and teleport to the city of him. The injuries on his body were too obvious. It would be easy for others to suspect him, so he needed to heal his injuries first. His physical body was strong enough. With the top healing pellets, he could recover quickly. In 4 hours, Lu Li's external wounds were almost healed. Of course, his bones and internal organs would not recover so quickly. Lu Li got up and was ready to leave. Buzzing, Lu Li left the castle of Black Moon. Many bodies were teleported out from the castle of Black Moon. They were all killed by the runes. The valley was filled with corpses. Naturally, Lu Li collected their interspatial rings. You can go now. Don't do evil again. Lu Li let out the 6 he captured. The mastermind had been killed. It did not matter whether the 6 could be killed or not. The 6 were scared out of their wits when they saw the corpses on the ground. All of them belonged to the castle of Black Moon. They fled in terror. Let's go. Lu Li put away the castle of Black Moon and flew away like a ghost. He was still flying toward the east. He must put on a good show. Even though the Yu family would find out by then, he should have reached the depth of the sea of mystic sounds. Chapter 23:33. The sea of mystical sound was not large compared to other seas. But it was not small either. This sea was special. There would be strange sounds coming from many places. The sounds contained some profound meanings in heaven and earth, which attracted many powerful warriors to cultivate here. There was another special feature of the sea of mystical sound. There was a kind of bird here, the red bird. There were so many of them that the entire sea was filled with them. They flew in the sky like a red cloud. Sometimes they would sing together and their cries were pleasant. They could echo the sounds in the sea of mystical sound and play a beautiful piece of music together. Today, there was a faint white mist over the sea that stretched for thousands of miles. On one of the islands, a flock of red birds flew by and let out soft cries. The flock of red birds circled around the area before landing on the island. There were people on the island, a small force. They turned a blind eye to the red bird. There was no end to the red birds. They were used to having red birds flying around. Whoosh, the sound of something tearing through the air came from the west. The sound was very sharp. It was the sound of something exploding at high speed. The people on the island were alarmed. From the noise, they could tell that some powerful battleships were approaching. Chirp, chirp, the red birds were startled. They flew into the sky and into the distance, forming a cloud of fire that blotted out the sky. Battleships of the mystical sound territory. The powerful warriors on the island used psychic power to check on the 3 battleships. They were relieved to see that they were 3 huge battleships with a special symbol of a musical instrument on the front. The battleships of the mystical sound territory never got involved in the affairs of the Sea of Mystical Sound, nor did they initiate attacks. They were just passing by. The 3 battleships glided away and soon disappeared into the distance. The people on the island were relieved. The battleships had 5 floors. Each one could accommodate thousands of people. Everyone had their own room. There were taverns and teahouses on the middle floor so people wouldn't feel bored. The super battleships were fast. If they traveled at the top of their speed, they could cross the sea in 3 months. That being said, the speed of the battleships would be controlled. They could cross the sea in about half a year. So many red birds. In a private room of the tea house on the 3rd floor, Luli, Qinzhan, and Ganlin were having tea. They had been out at sea for 5 days, and the waves had been calm. The 3 of them had also relaxed a little. Only then did they have the leisure to stroll around and drink tea. The tea here was not cheap. If the 3 of them were to drink it for the whole afternoon, thousands of god stones would be gone. That being said, Luli had gained 600 million divine stones from destroying the palace of Dark Moon and obtained the interspatial rings of the Old Witch and the others. He had hundreds of millions of divine stones left in his interspatial ring, enough for the 3 of them to spend for a while. There were many people in the tea house, and the seats were almost full. It would take at most half a year to cross the divine sound sea. In such a short time, many people could not be bothered to cultivate. It was so boring in their rooms that they decided to just drink tea or to the side. Wallalala, after flying for more than 2 hours, there was a strong wind outside, followed by a huge wave. No matter how strong the wind or how high the waves were, they had no effect on them. However, as the waves grew bigger, a strange sound of waves rang out in everyone's ears. Gradually, the tea house became silent. Everyone was listening to the sound of the wave. Luli and the others stopped drinking tea and chatting. They were all listening to the strange sound of the wave. Hua hua la hua, the sound of the waves did contain a strange melody. Luli was inspired after listening for a while. In addition to Luli, many others were inspired as well. But only a few could learn fundamental meanings. Many warriors settled down here, and they could not learn anything after hundreds of years. Of course, many had learned several powerful fundamental meanings. Otherwise, it wouldn't have attracted so many people here, and the divine sound sea wouldn't be so chaotic. 2 hours later, the sound of the waves died down. Luli and the others opened their eyes. Luli looked at Qinzhan and Ganlin with a smile and said, "How is it? Have you learned anything?" Qinzhan shook his head. Ganlin thoughtfully said, "I was a little touched, but I couldn't grasp it when I wanted to." Ha ha ha. Luli laughed. He took a sip of tea and said, "Don't worry. The more anxious you are, the harder it is for you to get something. Take it easy. Maybe you will find something unexpected. You guys talk. I will sit on the deck for a while." Ganlin suddenly stood up. Qinzhan looked over. There were more than a dozen people sitting on the deck with their eyes closed. Qin couldn't sit still anymore. He nodded and said, I will go as well. Let's see if we can learn anything in the next couple of months. Go. I will call you if I need anything. Lu Li waved his hand. He could understand that they were eager to improve their abilities. They were stimulated by him. Lu Li didn't go to the deck to cultivate. As he said, if he was lucky, it didn't matter where he was. Maybe he could learn something while drinking tea here. Splash, splash, splash. After 4 hours, the wind started blowing outside again, and the god's voice rang out again. More and more people went to the deck. Lu Li listened for another 2 hours but still gained nothing. He didn't want to listen anymore. He closed his eyes and enjoyed the tea by himself. It was rare for him to be so relaxed. After a while, Lu Li felt bored. He walked out of the tea house, walked around on the deck, and went back to the tavern. The tavern was full of drunkards. There wasn't much to see. Lu Li walked to the deck at the back of the battleship. He took a casual glance and his eyes glowed. On the deck stood a pretty lady, a young and pretty lady. The woman was wearing a black silk dress that was rather tight, revealing her graceful figure. From Lu Li's angle, he could see the side of her face. Her face was like jade and her facial features were exquisite. She was a rare beauty. The lady was looking at the waves in the distance with a frown. There was a hint of sadness on her face, which made people feel sorry for her. There were many good-looking women but few with temperament. This lady was one of them. Just by standing there, she could evoke the desire of any man to protect her. Lu Li looked away after one look. There were many pretty ladies, but he was not in the mood to flirt with them. He glanced around and saw an old man standing not far away from the woman. The old man had a respectful expression on his face, which made him slightly curious. The old man was powerful. Even though he couldn't tell, Lu Li could tell that he was at least at the middle stage of the fourth tribulation or even at the latter stage. The old man stood on the side with respect. Lu Li stared at the lady and the old man sent a warning look. Some men stared at the lady but didn't dare to come closer. What did it mean? It meant that the old man was the lady's escort, her subordinate. The lady must have a high status to be able to have such a powerful warrior as her escort. She might be a young lady of a superfamily. Lu Li didn't dare to provoke a lady like this. He turned around and was ready to go back. Right at that moment, the lady suddenly turned to Lu Li and said, "You are young Master Huang Tianbao, right?" Chapter 23:34. Noticing that Lu Li was on guard, the lady smiled and said again, "Young Master Huang, I mean you no harm. I want to make a deal with you. Can we go to my room?" An invitation from a pretty lady, to her room no less, would be thrilled and say yes right away. But Lu Li didn't answer. Instead, he gave the lady and the old man a meaningful look. After a moment, Lu Li nodded. He saw sincerity in the eyes of the lady and the old man. There was no trace of killing intent. Lu Li had just used the trace of Tao, which gave him a strong sense. If there was any killing intent, he could detect it. The lady bowed and then nodded to Lu Li. She led him to a cabin. The old man followed them, keeping a distance from Lu Li and the lady, which put Lu Li's mind at ease. They went into a cabin but the old man didn't. The cabin was the same as Lu Li's, but with some decorations, it was more elegant and there was a fragrance. "I will activate the inhibition formation." The lady smiled. After Lu Li's confirmation, she activated the inhibition formation in the cabin. Many people would see a man and a lady alone in a room. That being said, the lady didn't care about her reputation, so why would Lu Li? There was a small square table in the cabin. The lady knelt on the ground, took out some tea and began to boil it. Lu Li sat across from her, watching her cook. The lady must be from a prestigious family. Her movements were elegant. Clearly, she had been trained since she was a child. She was beautiful and had a nice smell. She had a nice temperament as well. That being said, Luli was calm. Mu Yingying was outstanding and affectionate. Even he couldn't resist it, not to mention a lady he had just met. Young Master Huang, have some tea. The tea was ready. The lady brought it over and said seriously, "Let me introduce myself. I am Mu Wanqing. I have taken the liberty to invite you today. I hope young Master Huang will not blame me for my impulsiveness." "It's okay." Luli held the tea but didn't drink it. What if there was something wrong? He put the tea down and said, "Lady Wanqing, just tell me what you want to say." "Well, how do you know my name?" "Dark Moon Palace." Mu Wanqing smiled faintly and said, "When young Lord displayed his invincible might in Tianyun City and killed the old witch, Wanqing just happened to be nearby. After witnessing young Master's supreme grace, I also admire young Master's courage." Luli was slightly startled. He didn't think that there would be two powerhouses hiding in the heavenly fortune city. How could he not notice them? Mu Wanqing was at the initial stage of the fourth tribulation and her guards were more powerful. Theoretically speaking, Luli should be able to sense it. Uncle Ru and I have restrained our auras." Mu Wanqing could tell that Luli was confused. She restrained her energy and turned into an average person. There was no sign of divine energy or warrior energy. Luli nodded, but he didn't let his guard down. He asked, "Lady Wanqing, what can I do for you? I need your help." Mu Wanqing went straight to the point and said, "I'm going to the austere continent's Luo Shui territory this time. I would like to ask young Master to help me hold down the fort. I might have to fight once or twice. Rest assured, young Master. If you don't do anything, I'll give you 2 billion godstones. If you do, I'll give you 10 billion godstones. It won't take up too much of young Master's time, at most a month or two." Luli was surprised. This Mu Wanqing was generous. She would give him 2 billion godstones without doing anything? Could it be that she valued his combat strength? If she had really witnessed the battle where he killed the old witch, then it would be understandable. Luli had hundreds of millions of godstones with him, but he was in need of them. Just because he was at the austere continent didn't mean that he would go to the Broken Sword Mountain of the Yin family. The Broken Sword Mountain was at the center of the continent. The austere continent was much larger than the Ziyang continent. It would cost Luli a lot to teleport there. Therefore, Luli had to find a way to earn godstones on his way to the austere continent. Now that he had such a chance, Luli was interested. He thought for a while and asked, "Lady Wanqing, can you tell me the whole story?" "Don't worry. I will not say a word no matter what. I can make an almighty oath." "No." Mu Wanqing shook her head and said, "I believe in young Master's character. You can enforce justice on behalf of heaven and kill the old witch. You are a hero and I trust you." Mu Wanqing thought about it and asked, "Young Master, are you familiar with the austere continent?" Luli was confused. He shook his head and said, "This is the first time I have left the Ziyang continent. I know little about the austere continent." Mu Wanqing nodded and explained, "I was born in the Mu family of the Luo Shui region at the austere continent. The Mu family used to be powerful, and we once had a powerful lord. But thousands of years ago there was a catastrophe. Many powerful warriors of the immediate Mu family died, and the family gradually declined. In my grandpa's generation, the immediate Mu family was even weaker. Even though my grandpa was the family patriarch, he was often suppressed by the collateral branches. They even colluded with enemies to assassinate my father. They forced me to marry a playboy from a wealthy family. I didn't want to. On the day of the wedding, I ran away to the Ziyang continent and went to my mother's family." Mu Wanqing's eyes reddened as she spoke. She seemed to be thinking of the painful past, which made her sad. Luli handed her a handkerchief. She wiped her eyes, forced a smile and said, "I didn't want to go back for the rest of my life. But recently I heard that my grandpa is seriously ill and that he is about to die." The branches of the family are going to work together to take over the family patriarch. I am worried that my brother will be at a disadvantage, so I asked Uncle Ru to go back with me to suppress the branches so that my brother can become the new family patriarch. I am worried that Uncle Ru and I are not strong enough to control the situation. That is why I asked young Master Huang to help me. The story was not complicated. It didn't seem to be a problem. The old witch was at the middle stage of the fourth tribulation. Several warriors at the middle stage of the fourth tribulation were killed by Lu Li. Mu Wanqing saw that Lu Li was strong and wanted him to help. It was reasonable. Lu Li thought about it and then asked a critical question. How many powerful warriors do you have in the collateral branches? How powerful are they? There are 34 warriors at the fourth tribulation. Mu Wanqing explained. 7 are on our side, 13 are neutral, 14 are against or even hostile. 5 are at the middle stage of the fourth tribulation. The most powerful one is Chief Patriarch. It is said that he is very close to the latter stage of the fourth tribulation. Okay. Lu Li kept a straight face, but he was speechless. On the side of the immediate family, there were only 7 patriarchs on their side. Twice as many were against them. One of them was suspected to be at the latter stage of the fourth tribulation. The immediate family of the Mu family was in a miserable state. As far as Lu Li was concerned, there was no difference between a family and a force. The immediate family was just one branch. If this branch could not make it, then they would abdicate and let a stronger branch take over. Only in this way could the family grow stronger and stronger. If the family was not strong enough and they had to occupy the position, it would make the family weaker and weaker. Chapter 23:35. Seeing that Lu Li didn't say anything, Mu Wanqing said with certainty, Young Master Huang, I have asked you to help me hold the fort. If we need to make a move, Uncle Ru will defend against Chief Patriarch. You just need to help me kill the rest of the elders. I believe that after killing a few elders, everyone will behave themselves. I don't need to fight a warrior at the later stage of the fourth tribulation? Lu Li was relieved. Even the old witch almost killed him. If it was a warrior at the later stage of the fourth tribulation, it would be hard for him to kill him. He might even lose his life. If he didn't have to fight a warrior at the later stage of the fourth tribulation, then he could think about it. He was just passing by and he was going to the central region of the chilly winterland. It was okay for him to help out and get some money. I am thinking, Lu Li said after some hesitation, even if you help your brother become the family patriarch, are you going to stay there all the time? If your brother is not capable and cannot convince people, then what is the point of him becoming the family patriarch? My brother is a genius. Mu Wanqing's expressions softened. She said, My brother is much younger than me and he has reached the fourth tribulation. In a few decades or 100 years, he will become a super powerful warrior. By then, revitalizing the Mu family will be a piece of cake. Okay. Lu Li shrugged and said, I need to think about it. I will give you an answer when we are close to the chilly winterland. Mu Wanqing was disappointed, but she forced a smile and nodded. I will wait for your good news at any time. As long as you agree, I can pay you 500 million as a deposit. Okay, I will leave now. Lu Li stood up and cupped his fist. Mu Wanqing bowed back. Lu Li opened the inhibition formation and walked out. After a while, the old man came in. Mu Wanqing opened the inhibition formation again. Uncle Ru asked, Lady, how is it? There is no definite answer. Mu Wanqing was disappointed. She sighed and said, Is the reward too low? I think it is enough. Uncle Ru shook his head and said, If he doesn't agree, then so be it. Lady, don't feel aggrieved. I will do my best to protect you. Okay. Mu Wanqing nodded and said, I'll arrange to have a chat with him later. This person can destroy the Black Moon Palace alone. His combat prowess cannot be underestimated. He also has a holy weapon shard on him. On the surface, he looks like a second tribulation martial artist. His overall combat strength is very strong. With his help, returning to the Mu family this time will be a sure thing. Lu Li walked around and saw that Qin Zhan and Gan Lin were cultivating on the deck. He went back to his room. After pondering for a moment, he did not make up his mind. Anyway, it was still early. He would wait until he reached the chilly winter continent. Let's cultivate for a few days. Since he had nothing to do, he cultivated in his room. After a while, the divine voice came again. Lu Li realized that when he was in closed-door cultivation, the divine voice could still be heard in his mind. Even his cultivation was disrupted. He immediately entered the illusory realm so that Shen Yin would not be able to disturb him. He continued to cultivate. He cultivated the bone-refining technique while cultivating his divine power. At the same time, he comprehended the marks of the Great Tao. Recently, Lu Li had been studying the trace of the Great Tao. He felt the trace of the Great Tao was like a book that contained the secrets of heaven and earth. Just some of it was enough for him to eat more than he could chew, let alone learn all of it. Therefore, he almost stopped studying fundamental principles. Whenever he had the time, he would study the marks of the Great Tao. If he could learn more, he would be able to acquire more powerful skills. Clatter, clatter, while he was comprehending it, he could vaguely hear the sound of the waves. He had already entered a dreamlike state and had completely shut off his six senses. He could not hear any sounds from the outside world. This divine sound was too mystical. It actually resounded directly within his soul. So annoying, hearing the sound of waves, Lu Li felt annoyed. He could not calm down to study. It was like a person sleeping with a fly buzzing in his ear. Even if he could fall asleep in a daze, he would not be at peace. Never mind. Let me take a rest. After a while, Lu Li could not calm down. He stopped studying the marks of the Great Tao. Instead, he focused on refining his bones and divine energy so that he would not be disturbed. 2 hours later, the divine voice disappeared. Lu Li went back to studying the marks of the Great Tao. Walala walala, after more than 4 hours, the waves below once again sounded with a divine sound. Together with the addition of a flock of red birds flying over nearby, the divine sound became a bit more powerful, and also a lot more mysterious. Is there an end to it? Lu Li was annoyed. The divine voice would come out every once in a while. He could not cultivate for half a year, right? Never mind. I will focus on refining my bones. After a while, Lu Li could not calm himself down. He was about to stop when his soul trembled. What is going on? Lu Li was trembling in fear. Just now, he had a vague feeling that a trace of the great path trembled. It was like a string being plucked. The trace of the Great Tao moved? Lu Li was dumbfounded. He had more than 3,000 marks of Great Tao in his body, and they were all imprinted in his bones. How did he move just now? Lu Li thought he was wrong. He cultivated again, and tried to sense the divine voice while studying the trace of the Great Tao to see if he was wrong. Bang! All of a sudden, a trace of the Great Tao trembled. This time, Lu Li was right. The trace of the Great Tao did move. His soul was trembling. His mind was spinning as he tried to figure out why this was happening. Is the divine voice connected with the trace of the Great Tao? It resonated with the trace of the Great Tao, so the trace of the Great Tao is affected? Lu Li thought of a possibility. He was overjoyed. If that was the case, it would be beneficial for him to study the fundamental principle of the divine voice or the trace of the Great Tao. Lu Li was not sure how much it could benefit him, but if he could figure out why the trace of the Great Tao was trembling, he would gain a lot. Lu Li entered the state of illusion at once. He began to focus on the divine voice while studying the trace of the Great Tao. A moment later, another trace of the Great Tao trembled. Bang, bang, bang. As time went by, the traces of the great Tao trembled in a rhythmic manner. Luli tried to sense the divine voice. He found that the pattern of the trace of the great Tao and the rhythm of the divine voice overlap. The divine voice has resonated with the trace of the great Tao. 2 hours later, the divine voice stopped. The trace of the great Tao did not tremble again. Luli was thrilled. He was certain that the movement of the trace of the great Tao was related to the divine voice. Luli still did not know why the trace of the great Tao would resonate with the divine voice and what he could gain from it. Chapter 2336. Once again, Luli felt he had opened the door to a whole new world. The divine sound could match with his trace of the great Tao. At first, Luli had planned to cultivate to kill time. But now, he was excited. He forgot about everything, including the Yu family. He forgot that this was not the safest time. He forgot about Qin Zhan, Gan Lin, and Mu Wanqing. He focused all his attention on the divine sound. Previously, he felt the divine sound was irritating. Now, he had been waiting for it to resonate with the trace of the great Tao. Time flew by as he cultivated. Before Luli knew it, 10 days had passed. Qin Zhan and Gan Lin had been cultivating. They thought Luli would keep an eye on the surroundings and inform them at once if there was any danger. What they didn't know was that Luli didn't care about anything. He was more immersed than they were. Luckily, the Yu family didn't come after them. They had been on their way for more than 10 days and nothing had happened. They had entered the depth of the sea of mystical sounds. There shouldn't be any danger. Mu Wanqing was worried. Luli didn't show up after he went into the room. She thought he was not interested anymore. The more she thought about it, the more she wondered if she had asked too little. After all, Luli had the holy weapon fragment. Would he be short of divine stones? Also, Luli had killed the warriors of the Palace of Dark Moon. So many powerful warriors and so many treasures must have been worth at least several billion divine stones. Luli wouldn't be interested in the divine stones she offered, would he? The thing was, she didn't have many divine stones with her. She had promised Luli 10 billion divine stones. She had to ask her brother to give her the divine stones after she took over the Mu family. She had some treasures, but Luli wouldn't be interested. She had been troubled these days. She wandered around the battleship, trying to find other helpers. There were some Fourth Tribulation martial artists on the warship, but many of them were old perverts. Looking at her lecherous eyes, if she asked them for help, those old perverts would probably ask her to sleep with them. Finally, she found a warrior at the middle stage of the Fourth Tribulation who agreed to help. But he asked for 50 billion divine stones and another 10 billion must be paid first. Mu Wanqing didn't have that many divine stones. Naturally, she couldn't ask him for help. She was in despair. Her mother's family didn't care about this matter, and Uncle Ru was transferred to her by her maternal grandfather. Uncle Ru wouldn't be able to control the situation by himself. If something went wrong, not only would they die, but her younger brother would also be killed. At that time, the branch families would completely take over the Mu family. Do I really have to give myself to those old perverts? A thought popped up in Mu Wanqing's mind. Then, she started trembling out of fear. Back then, she had fled to the Purple Sun continent alone because she was dissatisfied with her clan's arrangements. She had kept her chastity for many years. Now, she had to serve a wolf with her body. How could she accept this? Sigh. Mu Wanqing was worried all day long. The closer they got to the chilly winter continent, the more worried she became. If they reached the chilly winter continent, the Mu family would definitely receive the news. At that time, it would be somewhat unjustifiable for her to look for someone from the outside. Now, she was looking for someone who could be said to be a powerhouse from her maiden family. In this way, the people of the Mu family would have nothing to say. Time passed quickly, and 2 months had passed. Because it was the Divine Sound Territory's super warship, no one dared to stop it, even though the divine sound ocean was very chaotic. On the way, they also encountered a battle. Two powerhouses were fighting fiercely. When the two realized that it was the divine sound territory's warship, they flew far away at the same time. They didn't dare to attack the warship. More and more people sat on the deck. They were all trying to comprehend the divine sound. However, after such a long time, no one had gained anything. It seemed that this divine sound wasn't something that could be comprehended just because one wanted to. Mu Wanqing contacted a few more people and negotiated repeatedly. In the end, she didn't gain much. Only 2 early-stage Fourth Tribulation cultivators were willing to go and cheer, but they wouldn't attack. The asking price was 2 billion divine stones. Mu Wanqing didn't agree for the time being. Early-stage Fourth Tribulation cultivators weren't very useful. If she went, she wouldn't be able to intimidate the Mu family's powerhouses. There was an old pervert who had been very attentive recently. He said that Mu Wanqing would accompany him for 2 months. If he helped Mu Wanqing wipe out the Mu family, he could kill whoever he wanted. This old pervert was only at the mid-stage Fourth Tribulation realm. He was about the same level as Uncle Ru. How dare he say that he could kill whoever he wanted? He probably wanted to sleep for 2 months for nothing and then run away as soon as they arrived at the chilly winterland. Another 1.5 months passed. The person who was seated cross-legged on the deck suddenly waved his hand. Next, the surrounding space rippled and ripples spread out. Next, a series of strange sounds rang out in the minds of everyone nearby. All the people cultivating on the deck were alarmed. Even many warriors were alarmed. Some powerful warriors were stunned. They looked at a young man sitting on the deck. Qin Zhan. Gan Lin opened his eyes. He was surprised to see that it was Qin Zhan who waved his hand. Then, joy and envy appeared on his face. Gan Lin and Qin Zhan studied it together. He was inspired a long time ago. He had been in closed-door cultivation for such a long time, but he didn't gain anything. He didn't expect that Qin Zhan had learned the fundamental principle of divine sound. Where is Lu Li? Gan Lin noticed that many people were paying attention to Qin Zhan. He was afraid that someone was up to no good. He used psychic power to check the battlefield but didn't see Lu Li. Seeing that Lu Li's cabin was closed, Gan Lin went to Lu Li's cabin. He knocked on the door but Lu Li still didn't respond. Gan Lin had to come back and sit next to Qin Zhan to protect him. But violence was not allowed on the battleship. Gan Lin was not too worried. Clearly, Qin Zhan had just started. He was most afraid of being interrupted. Gan Lin was on guard. The people nearby didn't act rashly. If Qin Zhan was disturbed, he would risk his life when he woke up. This guy is lucky. He can learn the fundamental principle of divine sound. It doesn't seem powerful, but it is one of the supreme fundamental principles. Alas! I have been in closed-door cultivation for so long, but I have gained nothing. Comparisons are odious. A group of people sighed with emotion. Even some Fourth Tribulation experts revealed looks of envy. The true meaning of divine sound was very powerful. It was one of the supreme true meanings. Although it seemed like Qin Zhan's comprehension wasn't particularly high, he was still lucky. It is a pity that he is a Third Tribulation warrior. Mu Wanqing's face showed a trace of pity. If Qin Zhan was a Fourth Tribulation warrior, she would try to get Qin Zhan's help. But a Third Tribulation warrior was not meaningful. 1 hour later, Qin Zhan stopped waving his hands. His qi and energy became calm. It seemed that he had completely learned the fundamental principle. Once the fundamental principle was learned, the following things would be much easier. The waves below gradually calmed down. The fundamental principle stopped. Many people who were cultivating on the deck stood up. Qin Zhan's understanding of the fundamental principle of divine sound was a blow to them. Many people decided to take a break before continuing. Walalala, right at this moment, something strange happened. A strong wave came from inside the battleship. Then, the surrounding seawater seemed to have gone crazy. Huge waves rolled up. Dong dong dong. In a room, there was a continuous muffled sound. The sound rang in everyone's mind as if it was hitting their souls. The seawater below was completely rioting. Countless waves rolled up and shot up into the sky like water dragons. Then, they slammed down, scaring everyone on the battleship. Hiss, another person has learned the fundamental principle of divine sound? And it is such a powerful fundamental principle? This sound is so strange. It must be a very powerful fundamental principle of divine sound. The battleship exploded. Countless experts flew out from the cabin and looked at the source of the sound in shock. Their faces were not only filled with envy but also intense jealousy. "It's him!" Mu Wanqing looked toward the source of the sound. Her delicate body trembled violently. Gan Lin also took a glance. His face immediately revealed an ecstatic expression. Chapter 23:37. A muffled sound came out in a rhythmic manner. Every time the sound was heard, waves would rise in the nearby seawater, lapping at the battleship and making strange noises. Space was trembling and rippling. Wind was raging in the sky, making whistling sounds as well. Together with the sound of water and the muffled sound, it formed a strange rhythm. Not only the battleship on this side, but those on the other two ships were alarmed as well. They all used psychic power to check one cabin. The patterns on the super battleship were strong. Average warriors could not use psychic power to see inside. Therefore, they only knew that someone had learned a fundamental principle of sound, a powerful one, but they did not know who it was. The Sea of Sound was a miraculous place. Every now and then, sounds would come out from the sea. There were many miraculous laws in the sea. Some were weak, and some were strong. But all of them were difficult to learn. Many warriors had been studying here for 10,000 years without gaining anything. Today, there were two people on the battleship that had learned the fundamental principle of sound, and another one had learned a powerful one. How could they not be surprised and envious? Mu Wanqing's eyes glowed. Lu Li was already strong. Now, he had learned a powerful law of sound. Wouldn't he be more powerful? If Lu Li agreed to help her, then this trip would be a smooth one. Gan Lin was the happiest. He was happy for the two of them. At the same time, he was a bit disappointed. He himself had not made much progress while his two buddies were improving by leaps and bounds. Anyone would be disappointed. Lu Li's strange situation lasted for over 2 hours. When he stopped, the waves calmed down as well. The excitement on the battleship lasted for over 2 hours. Everyone had calmed down. No matter how powerful a law was, it belonged to someone else and had nothing to do with them. Qin Zhan was still in closed-door cultivation. Gan Lin had to protect him. Lu Li would need some time to consolidate his power. It would take at least half a month for them to confirm what fundamental principle Lu Li had learned. Mu Wanqing could not sit still. She did not go back to her room. Instead, she sat in the tea-house, waiting for Lu Li to come out. Many men wanted to come over and strike up a conversation, but this time, Mu Wanqing ignored them all. Uncle Ru sat by the side and stopped all the flies from approaching. After sitting there for 7 to 8 days, Qin Zhan came out of seclusion with a face full of excitement. He had comprehended a true intent that was very strong compared to his previous true intent. He believed that after cultivating for a while, he would be able to break through to the fourth tribulation realm. Many people came over to inquire, but Qin Zhan didn't say much. He only said a few perfunctory words and then pulled Gan Lin to drink. Although Gan Lin was a bit disappointed in his heart, he didn't dare to show it at this moment. He happily drank with Qin Zhan. Qin Zhan was even happier to know that Lu Li had learned the fundamental principle of divine sound as well. The two of them drank for half a day and spent more than 100,000 divine stones. After that, Qin Zhan and Gan Lin continued their closed-door cultivation while waiting for Lu Li to come out. Qin Zhan told Gan Lin the secret, he comprehended, and told him to relax and not to deliberately comprehend. As Lu Li said, when the time came, it would come. If the time was not right, there was no point in forcing it. Another 7 to 8 days later, Lu Li finally came out. The moment he opened the inhibition formation, many people scanned him with psychic power. Mu Wanqing and Uncle Ru in particular had their eyes fixed on him. Lu Li put up his guard out of instinct when he sensed so many psychic powers locked on him. But he relaxed after a quick scan. It seemed that something strange happened when he was learning the fundamental principle of divine sound, which was why so many people were paying attention. Even though he had mastered a powerful fundamental principle, Lu Li's qi and energy didn't change much. He was still a warrior at the second tribulation realm, but his qi and energy were comparable to those at the peak of the second tribulation realm. When he mastered this fundamental principle, he could go through the tribulation realm and break through to the third tribulation realm. Warriors at the third tribulation realm and the third tribulation realm were as common as dogs. Therefore, Lu Li's qi and energy were pitifully weak to others. Many people were jealous. How could a warrior at the second tribulation realm learn such a powerful fundamental principle? Whoosh, a man flew over and arrived in front of Lu Li. Lu Li put up his guard at once. He took out the heaven separation bead, ready to fight at any time. Punk, how did you learn the fundamental principle of divine sound? Tell me and I will reward you handsomely. It was a dark-skinned and strong man. He stared at Lu Li with fire in his eyes. Lu Li rolled his eyes. This man was an idiot. Lu Li could not teach him the way. Even if he could, Lu Li wouldn't tell him. Why? Therefore, Lu Li didn't pay attention to him and walked out directly. That man was at the peak of the third tribulation realm. Seeing that Lu Li didn't pay attention to him, he was enraged. He reached out his hand, trying to grab Lu Li's shoulder. What are you doing? Lu Li moved aside and glared at him. If they were not on the battleship, Lu Li would have taught this man a lesson. Lu Li looked at him coldly and said, "You want to fight here?" Many warriors had their eyes on Lu Li. Hearing Lu Li's words, a team leader said at once, "Don't make trouble or you will be kicked out of the battleship." The warrior at the peak of the third tribulation realm quieted down and glared at Lu Li. Lu Li shrugged and walked over to Qin Zhan and Gan Lin. The two warriors had been alerted. They walked over to Lu Li with a smile. Qin Zhan was in a good mood. He walked over in strides, cupped his fists and said, "Congratulations, boss." Boss? Everyone was surprised. Lu Li's realm was so low and yet he was their boss? It seemed that one could not judge a book by its cover. Lu Li didn't dare to be too ostentatious since so many people were paying attention to him. He dragged Qin Zhan and Gan Lin into the tavern and found a private room to sit down. For the convenience of discussion, there were divine glyphs in the private room. Lu Li ordered some wine and activated the inhibition formation. Qin Zhan asked with excitement, "Boss, what kind of fundamental principle have you learned?" "I don't know." Lu Li's answer confused the two warriors. How could he not know what the fundamental principle he had learned was? Lu Li explained with a forced smile, "I have just started. I feel the fundamental principle is broad and profound. I think I can only understand it after I understand it completely." "Then it must be very advanced." Qin Zhan and Gan Lin were envious. Lu Li nodded with a smile. "The fundamental principle must be advanced." The fundamental principle resonated with the trace of the Great Tao. Lu Li had learned it through the trace of the Great Tao. What was more, he didn't know what the fundamental principle was exactly. He felt he had just started and he had only seen the tip of the iceberg. The three of them chatted for a while and drank some celebratory wine. Seeing that Gan Lin was disappointed, Lu Li gave him some words of encouragement. Being a cheerful person, Gan Lin cheered up soon. Buzzing, buzzing, an hour later, the divine glyphs in the private room began to tremble. Luli pulled a long face. He thought someone was here to pester him endlessly. When he opened the divine glyphs, he realized it was Mu Wanqing. Young Master Huang. Chapter 2338. It was understandable that Mu Wanqing would come again, but Luli didn't expect her to be in such a hurry. Now that she had come, Luli couldn't turn her down. He nodded and said, "Sure." Mu Wanqing was delighted. She saluted again and said, "At dusk, please come to my cabin. Wanqing is waiting for you." Mu Wanqing left with a blushing face. Qin Zhan and Gan Lin jeered at once. Qin Zhan said, "I can't believe that Luli has hooked up with a beauty without anyone knowing. I will give her 9 points." Gan Lin grinned and said, "Luli is getting better at flirting. Look at the beauty. She said we are not talking here. She wants to invite Luli to her cabin. It is so obvious. She wants to ask Luli to spend the night." Qin Zhan and Gan Lin laughed obscenely. Luli didn't feel embarrassed at all. He waved his hand and said, "It is not what you think. I really have something to do." "Understood." Qin Zhan snapped his fingers and said, "Human relations are important. This is a serious matter." "Ha ha ha." Luli laughed. It was a rare time to be with the two. It was a time for him to open his heart and relax. He drank with them for a while. At dusk, a flock of red birds flew over and chased after the battleship of their own accord. Recently, there would be thunder and lightning from time to time in this area. Occasionally, there would be a whirlwind. The battleship slowed down so the red birds could catch up with it. The sky was filled with red birds chasing after the warship. It was a very good picture. Luli went back to his cabin to take a bath. He didn't have any other thoughts. He reeked of alcohol and he was afraid of losing his manners. Under the watchful eyes of many people, he went into Mu Wanqing's cabin, which aroused jealousy. Many people had their eyes on Mu Wanqing, a beauty, but she didn't give them any face. Uncle Ru was quite powerful. They were on the battleship so nobody dared to do anything. The inhibition formation in the cabin was activated, which made more people jealous. They secretly scolded Mu Wanqing for being shameless and a slut. A man and a woman staying in the same room alone was already controversial. Now that the inhibition formation was activated, they must be doing something indescribable in there. Mu Wanqing was still wearing a black dress today. However, the neckline of the black dress was slightly lower, and the side of her thighs was slit. It was faintly discernible and very alluring. She put on some light makeup, which made her look even more stunning. "Young noble Huang." Mu Wanqing bowed to salute. Luli looked down from above and could see the white skin on her chest. Luli looked away after a quick glance. His mind was calm. After both of them were seated, Mu Wanqing did not boil the tea. Instead, she asked with a faint smile, "Young noble Huang, do you have any good wine?" "I don't have any good wine here. Tonight, Wanqing wants to drink 2 cups with Gongzi." Luli paused for a second, but then he understood what Mu Wanqing meant. She was asking him for the wine to reassure him. After all, his wine couldn't have been poisoned. At the same time, drinking could also increase the mood. Looking at Mu Wanqing's actions today, was she trying to seduce him? Luli took out 2 jars of wine and said with a smile, "Truth be told, Huang Tianba is my pseudonym. Lady Wanqing, you can call me Young Master Lu from now on. My family name is Lu." "Alias?" Mu Wanqing was surprised, but she didn't pursue the matter. She poured Luli a goblet and said with a smile, "Here, it's nice to meet you, Young Master Lu. Here's to you." "Congratulations, Young Master Lu, for learning the law of sound. Here's to you again. Young Master Lu, you are so young and you are so strong. You will become a top warrior at the 3rd heaven in the future. Here's to you." It is fate that brought us to know each other. I am honored to know a hero like young Master Lu. Let's drink again. Young Master Lu, here's to you. For almost an hour, Mu Wanqing kept on toasting Lu Li, using all kinds of excuses. Lu Li didn't refuse. The wine was not intoxicating. When he was really tipsy, he could use divine energy to get rid of it. After a jar of wine, Lu Li seemed to be fine. But Mu Wanqing's cheeks were flushed and she was burning. Her breaths were short and her chest was heaving up and down. Her eyes were blurred, which added to her allure. Mu Wanqing never got down to business. She seemed to have forgotten what she wanted to talk to Lu Li about. She just kept on drinking with Lu Li. Usually, it was the man who wanted to get the lady drunk. But now, it was the other way around. The lady was trying to get the man drunk, which was counterproductive. Okay. Another 2 jars of wine were gone. Lu Li didn't take out any more. Looking at Mu Wanqing seriously, he said, "Okay, stop drinking. It is time to talk." Ha ha, Mu Wanqing smiled like a peach blossom. She looked up at Lu Li and said, "Young Master Lu, do you think I am pretty?" "Yes," Lu Li said sincerely. From every angle, Mu Wanqing was a beautiful lady. She was elegant, graceful, charming, and beautiful. Mu Wanqing smiled brightly, but there was also a hint of sadness in her smile. Suddenly, she reached out and tugged at her belt. Then, she slowly undid the buttons on her dress. Her long dress slid down, revealing her pink undergarments. Her skin was faintly discernible, and it was extremely alluring. She closed her eyes, stood up and walked to the room next door. At the door, she looked back and said, "Young Master Lu, please take care of me. Tonight is my first time." Lu Li didn't move. He didn't even turn his head to look at Mu Wanqing's beautiful back. He sighed, took out another jar of wine and drank by himself. Mu Wanqing's body was trembling. Seeing that Lu Li didn't respond, she was ashamed and angry. Her lips trembled as she said, "Young Master Lu, you don't like me?" "No." Lu Li answered honestly, "Lady Wanqing, you are lovely and beautiful. Any man will fall for you." Then Mu Wanqing was confused. Then she thought of something and asked with embarrassment, "Young Master Lu, you don't like women?" "Ha ha ha." Lu Li was amused. He took a sip of wine and grabbed at the air. Mu Wanqing's dress flew over. He waved his hand and said, "I like pretty girls but I don't like this kind of deal. Lady Wanqing, put on your clothes before you come out. We can talk." Mu Wanqing held her dress shyly. She stayed in the room for the time for 2 incense sticks to burn before she came out. She sat down again and lowered her head, afraid to look at Lu Li. A virgin offering herself to a man only to be turned down. She was from a prestigious family. Mu Wanqing spent the whole afternoon cheering herself up. She finally made up her mind. Little did she expect that this would be the result. That was right. Mu Wanqing had decided to give herself to Lu Li. She had nothing more to give to Lu Li other than a clean body. For her brother, she had decided to sacrifice herself. Compared to serving those old perverts, it was a good choice to give herself to Lu Li. At least, Lu Li left a good impression on her. Lu Li poured Mu Wanqing a goblet of wine and said with a smile, "I agree to your proposal. But when I finish what I want, you must give me the 10 billion divine stones." Chapter 2339. Lu Li didn't think he was a good man, but he had his principles and bottom line. He was a normal man. He would be tempted by pretty girls, but he would not go so far as to take her body for a deal. He agreed to help Mu Wanqing for 2 reasons. For one, it was along the way. For another, he did need the divine stones. Of course, he and Mu Wanqing had made a pact. If things went wrong and he was in danger, he would leave. He could not get himself into trouble just to help someone. What was more, Qin Zhan and Gan Lin would be with him. He didn't want to implicate them. Mu Wanqing was ready to sacrifice her body in exchange for Lu Li's help. She didn't expect that Lu Li would agree to her terms. Mu Wanqing was happy and frustrated at the same time. For the first time, she doubted her own charm. Could it be that she wasn't charming enough to move Lu Li? After a while, Lu Li and Mu Wanqing agreed that they would leave together when they arrived at the destination. Mu Wanqing would pay for the transportation to the Luo Shui region. Mu Wanqing didn't have to pay the deposit first. She would ask the Mu family to pay when the deal was done. Mu Wanqing agreed immediately. Lu Li opened the inhibition formation in the room and walked out. The door was not high. Lu Li's back seemed to be very tall. Mu Wanqing was born in a big family. She was used to seeing despicable people. Everyone would resort to unscrupulous means for their own interests. Few were upright and righteous. When Lu Li destroyed the palace of Dark Moon, he said he was doing justice. Now, he was helping and didn't take advantage of her. Mu Wanqing's impression of Lu Li was elevated. Lu Li went back to closed-door cultivation. He wanted to study the fundamental principle of sound. He wanted to see if he could learn it before they arrived at the chilly winterland. The fundamental principle could be learned because of the resonance between the divine sound and the trace of the great path. Along the way, there would be constant sounds that would resonate with the trace of the great path. In this way, Lu Li could learn it faster. Qin Zhan and Gan Lin continued to cultivate on the deck. Because of Lu Li and Qin Zhan's provocation, more people went to cultivate to see if they could be lucky enough to learn a fundamental principle of sound. The journey was peaceful. Nobody dared to mess with the battleships of the Divine Sound region. Along the way, they encountered a chaotic battle. In the end, when the Divine Sound Territory's warship passed by, the two sides actually stopped and let the warship pass before continuing to fight. They were afraid that they would accidentally destroy the warship. Lu Li had made up his mind to help. Mu Wanqing was reassured. She stayed in her room and cultivated. This greatly disappointed many of the old perverts. They had thought that they would be able to get a beauty and have some fun. Some people hated Lu Li. Lu Li had stayed in Mu Wanqing's room for half a night. Who knew what had happened? Some wanted to teach Lu Li a lesson when they got to the chilly winterland. Time flew by, and in the blink of an eye, 5 months had passed. The super warship crossed the divine sonar ocean and would arrive at the chilly winter continent in a few days. Qin Zhan's divine sound true intent had already reached large success. He estimated that he would be able to break through to the fourth tribulation realm in another 6 months to a year. Gan Lin still didn't gain anything. However, he was a cheerful person, so he didn't sink into depravity. Instead, he worked even harder at his cultivation. Ever since Lu Li talked to Mu Wanqing that day, he had been in closed-door cultivation. Nobody knew how he was progressing with the divine sound true intent. Qin Zhan and Gan Lin didn't dare to disturb him. They had to wait until they arrived at the chilly winterland. Mu Wanqing came out looking forward to the journey. She grew up on this continent. Her roots were here. Even though she had a good life in her mother's family, she still wanted to come back. If everything went well and her brother became the new family patriarch, then her life would be better. By then, all her troubles would be gone. Several days passed by quickly. The warship docked outside a huge city. The name of the city was the Chilly West City. The implication was clear. It was the westernmost part of the chilly winterland. Lu Li was woken up. He opened the inhibition formation and saw the city outside. He exclaimed, "We have arrived at the chilly winterland. That is fast." Riding on the super warship was great. He didn't have to worry about anything. He could cultivate for a while in peace. The divine sonar ocean was dangerous, but nothing happened along the way. The 200 million divine stones were well spent. "Let's go." Lu Li stretched. He felt more relaxed. The dispute at the Ziyang land had passed. He didn't have to worry about the Devil Sea, the Yu family or the pure heaven blood eagle race. At the third heaven, As long as one didn't offend the ancient super races or the families of emperors, one could escape from one continent to another. If one could escape to another continent, the enemies would not chase after him. For one thing, it was too far away. For another, it was within the sphere of influence of others. Young Master Lu. Mu Wanqing walked over with Uncle Ru. Qin Zhan and Gan Lin came as well. Lu Li nodded and said, "Let's go in first." Lu Li seemed to be the weakest, but he was giving orders like a boss. It just so happened that Qin Zhan and Gan Lin were used to his orders. Mu Wanqing was relying on Lu Li now. Uncle Ru rarely spoke. He was Mu Wanqing's slave and he would do whatever she said. They flew up from the warship and landed at the city gate. They handed over the divine stones and went in. At first, many wanted to make trouble for Lu Li. But now they sighed. Nobody dared to do anything now that they were in the city. The Western Forest City was large, about the same size as the Mystichim City. They went to a tavern to settle down and had a good meal. Then, Lu Li asked Qin Zhan to buy some maps and gather some information. Uncle Ru left as well. Clearly, he was going to get some information about the Luo Shui region or to contact someone from the Mu family here. Half a day later, Qin Zhan came back with some maps, including the entire chilly winterland and the Broken Sword Mountain. "Boss, the Yin family is powerful," Qin Zhan said with excitement as soon as he came in. "It is said that the Yin family once had an emperor. They have been rising over the years. Now they have taken over one region and controlled two in secret. They are one of the super families of the chilly winterland." "What about Yin Qingxi and Yin Rulan?" Lu Li asked about the two most important people. Qin Zhan nodded and said, "Yin Rulan is famous. She is the most important young lady of the Yin family. Yin Qingxi, on the other hand, is not well known. I have asked around but there is no such person." "That is strange," Lu Li frowned. He looked at the map and nodded. "Never mind. When we are done with the Luo Shui region, and get the 10 billion divine stones, we can teleport to the Broken Sword Mountain. We should be able to teleport to the Broken Sword Mountain soon. We'll talk about it after we see Yin Rulan. A super family should have the ability to open up long-distance portals. The Yin family once had an emperor. They had a profound foundation. If they could open up the portals to the Flying Fire continent, it would be perfect. Bang bang bang. Chapter 2340. Chilly Winter Continent, Luo Shui Territory. This was a very ancient domain, and many domains were constantly changing their names. For example, when a lord changed, it would change its name. However, the Luo water domain's name had lasted for hundreds of thousands of years, because there was a river here called the Luo River, and there was a clan here called the Luo clan. The Luo family had a very long history. In the entire Luo Shui territory, there were only a few families that had a longer history than the Luo family. There were only a few families that were second only to the Luo family, and the Mu family was one of them. The Mu family once had a lord-class powerhouse who occupied a territory nearby. However, after this lord-class powerhouse died, the family gradually declined and was even hunted down. In the end, the Mu family sought refuge in the Luo Shui territory and relied on the Luo family to protect themselves. A starving camel is still bigger than a horse. Although the Mu clan had declined, it was still very powerful. It had always been the second largest clan in the Luo Shui territory, until a great change occurred 1,000 years ago. Most of the direct descendants of the Mu family had entered a dangerous place and died by accident. The Mu family could be considered to have completely declined. The direct bloodline began to be unable to hold their heads up high. In addition, Mu Wanqing's father had died unexpectedly, and Mu Wanqing's grandfather had injured his vitality 1,000 years ago. They would not be able to hold on for much longer. Once the old man died, the position of clan leader would definitely not fall to the direct bloodline. The strongest member of the direct bloodline would be Mu Wanqing's younger brother, Reverend King Xing. Because he was too young, there was no way he could control the situation. He had only joined the Elder Hall for a few years, so it was too difficult for him to become the Patriarch. If the Reverend King planet failed in the competition for the position of Patriarch, then the fate that awaited them would not be as simple as being defeated. This was because the Reverend King Star's bloodline had always been the Patriarch, and his prestige within the clan was very high. In order to completely stabilize the Mu family, the new Patriarch had to find a way to destroy the Reverend King Star. In addition, the Reverend King Star's aptitude was heaven-defying. If he was given 100 years to mature, he would definitely become a powerhouse of his generation. At that time, he would definitely fight for the position of clan leader. Thus, the atmosphere in the Mu clan's Mu Immortal City was rather heavy. The old clan head's condition was deteriorating day by day, and it was estimated that it would only take a few days for him to recover. Several of the major branches were stirring up trouble in the dark, forming all kinds of alliances. They were just waiting for the death of the old clan leader to start competing for the position of clan leader. All kinds of rumors began to spread within the family. There were 3 main rumors. The first was about how hard the Great Elder had worked for the family, how much he had contributed to the family, and how much he had sacrificed for the family. The other rumor was about the Great Elder. It was said that the Great Elder had recently comprehended some kind of powerful divine ability, and his combat power had increased by a lot. There was also a rumor that the Great Elder's son was going to be engaged to a young lady of the Luo family and would receive the full support of the Luo family. There was another rumor, but it was a bad one. He said that the Reverend King planet was innately malevolent, and that not only had his father been cursed to death, but even the old Patriarch had been cursed to death. He said that he had a baleful ghost body, and that his entire clan might be cursed to extinction by him. It was obvious. These rumors had been purposefully spread by someone to build momentum for the Grand Elder and Grand Elder, as well as to suppress the Reverend King planet. Don't underestimate this kind of rumor. Anyone who wanted to be promoted needed support. If everyone was unconvinced and couldn't convince the masses, it would be very difficult for them to sit firmly in their position. If everyone doesn't listen to you, then there's no point for you to be the clan leader. Dong dong dong, in the middle of the night, in the main hall of Mu Immortal City, the dull sound of a bell rang out. Countless people in the city immediately flew out and looked in that direction. Dong dong dong, the bell rang continuously, and the louder it got, the colder the hearts of the people in the city became. After the bell rang 99 times, countless people's faces were filled with grief. Many people knelt on the ground and wailed. 9 by 9 returned to 1. Many big clans were actually similar. When the bell rang 99 times, it meant that the most important person in the clan had passed away. The other elders in the clan still had long lives and were in good health. The only explanation for this bell was that the old Patriarch had passed away. Soon, the sound of crying came from the main hall. The news had been confirmed. The old Patriarch had passed away. The Mu family had lost a powerful cultivator and a good Patriarch. The news gradually spread, and all the powerful cultivators of the Mu family who were outside hurried back. As long as they were members of the Mu family who had some ability, they all teleported to Mu Immortal City. The death of the Patriarch was a big event. After the burial, the new Patriarch would be born and the people of the Mu family would come to pay their respects to the new Patriarch. The death of the Patriarch was a big event. All the big clans in the Luo Shui territory would come to pay their respects. The grand funeral lasted for half a month. Finally, the Mu family settled down. Of course, this was just on the surface. There was a lot of turbulence in the dark. On the 3rd day after the funeral, all the 4 calamities of the clan gathered in the main hall for a family meeting to elect a new Patriarch. Normally, there was no need to elect a new patriarch because Mu Wanqing's branch had always been the leader of the clan. It was always passed down from father to son and from son to grandson. There were many powerful cultivators in the direct branch. The position of the patriarch didn't belong to the other branches. Therefore, there was no such thing as choosing a new patriarch. Usually, the old patriarch would appoint the new patriarch. However, the old patriarch had been in a coma for a long time. He had been in a coma for more than a year and didn't leave any instructions. Therefore, under the second elder's suggestion, all the elders and commanders of the clan gathered together to elect a patriarch. Reverend King Xing was filled with grief and indignation, but he had no choice but to suppress his anger. During this time, he had secretly sought out many elders, but all of their answers were ambiguous. They hadn't prepared a reply. There was even one person who had been a staunch supporter of the clan, but his tone seemed to be a bit off. The second elder presided over the meeting. His words were very smooth, saying that a country couldn't go without a leader, and that the clan couldn't go without an elder. The old patriarch hadn't left any instructions, and there were many voices in the clan. Therefore, this meeting was held to listen to everyone's opinions. Then, a few commanders directly spoke up. Under normal circumstances, the selection of the patriarch was a matter for the elder hall. Commanders didn't have the right to participate in such a meeting, let alone speak up. However, there were many commanders who spoke up. Some said that the Grand Elder had contributed greatly to the clan, was powerful, and had high prestige. The position of patriarch had to be given to the Grand Elder, or else many people wouldn't be convinced. There were also commanders who said that the Grand Elder had both integrity and talent. In recent years, the Grand Elder had managed all of the clan's affairs, both big and small. The great clans in the outside world all approved of the Grand Elder, and the position of patriarch had to be given to the Grand Elder. Of course, there were also those who supported Reverend King Xing. After all, he was a direct descendant of the clan, and he was young and promising. Under his leadership, the clan would definitely be able to regain its former glory. All of the elders had long since decided on a candidate, and there was no point in saying anything more. In the end, they would definitely have to vote. The clan couldn't afford to have internal strife, and they couldn't afford to. The Mu clan was already so weak, and if they continued to fight amongst themselves, the clan would most likely be destroyed. The meeting went on for more than 6 hours before the voting finally began. Each of the 30-some elders had a vote, and the one with the most votes would become the new patriarch. The clan couldn't afford to have internal strife, and they couldn't afford to. The Mu clan was already so weak, and if they continued to fight amongst themselves, the clan would most likely be destroyed. Chapter 23:41. The moment they arrived at the immortal city of Mu, Mu Wanqing felt like her eyes were brimming with tears. She was born here, grew up here, laughed here, and cried here. She had too many memories of this city, and it often appeared in her dreams. Even though she was living a good life at her mother's maiden home, she was living under someone else's roof. She always felt like a rootless duckweed. This was her root, her real home. She stood in the teleportation formation in a trance. There was a group of soldiers standing guard near the teleportation array. When they saw a few experts, especially Uncle Ru's powerful aura, the soldiers immediately tensed up. Many people were walking around in the city as well. Mu Wanqing's stunning appearance attracted many people's attention. But nobody recognized her. It was mainly because Mu Wanqing had been away for many years. She was of noble status and rarely showed herself in public. Therefore, people were not familiar with her. "Greetings, my lords." A team leader came over and saluted Mu Wanqing and Uncle Ru. Both of them were fourth tribulation warriors. For them, they were the most powerful warriors. The Mu family was in a precarious situation. Naturally, the warriors didn't dare to offend the big shots outside. After the salutation, the warrior looked at Uncle Ru and said, "Where are you from? What business do you have at the immortal city of Mu? If there is anything to be arranged, I will report it and ask the patriarchs to entertain you." "No, I know the way to the Hall of Patriarchs." Uncle Ru didn't say anything, but Mu Wanqing did. A command medallion appeared in her hand, startling the group of soldiers. They were all very familiar with this command medallion. It was the Reverend King's medallion, a medallion that only the most respected members of the clan could possess. "Let's go." Since Mu Wanqing came back to support her brother, she must be high profile. She waved her hand and left with Uncle Ru, Lu Li, Qin Zhan and Gan Lin to the north. The group of soldiers looked at each other in dismay, but did not dare to stop them. The squad leader signaled with his eyes and brought 2 people to follow behind, while the other person quickly ran off to report to their superior. Mu Wanqing had an extraordinary bearing. She strode away with the 4. Lu Li thought about it and sent a message to Qin Zhan and Gan Lin. Then, they were put into the separation bead. Although Qin Zhan had comprehended the divine sound true meaning, he was only at the peak of Tier 3. He was not very useful here, let alone Gan Lin. This time, there might be a big fight. For the sake of their safety, and not to drag Lu Li down, putting them into the heaven separation bead was the most ideal situation. Mu Wanqing and Uncle Ru noticed this, but they didn't mind. Those 2 were too weak. Lu Li was more than enough. Lu Li had more than 100 wind warcraft. The 2 of them saw with their own eyes that Lu Li could defeat average warriors at the middle stage of the 4th tribulation with just the wind warcraft. Mu Wanqing led her people to the City Lord Manor. There were naturally soldiers guarding this place. There was also a peak 3rd tribulation commander, who led 50 people to guard the City Lord Manor's gate. Who are these 2 lords? This commander had already received the voice transmission from the squad leader behind him. His attitude was very polite as he cupped his hands and said, "If the 2 sirs have anything to say, please report your names. I will immediately report it to the elders." The commander ignored Lu Li, who was at the peak of the 2nd tribulation. As far as he was concerned, a warrior at the peak of the 2nd tribulation must be a lackey. He didn't dress like a young master either. Mu Wanqing showed the token in her hand again and said coldly, "Take me to the Reverend King planet." "Reverend King token? You want to see young Master Xing?" The commander was taken aback. He stared at Mu Wanqing and said with his eyes wide open, You are young Lady Qing?" When Mu Wanqing left, she was not old and she was not powerful. She was a delicate young lady at the middle stage of the 3rd tribulation. Now that she had reached the 4th tribulation, she had gone through many things over the years. Her temperament had changed. The commander had met Mu Wanqing several times before, so he could recognize her. Mu Wanqing remained emotionless. She said coldly, "Why don't you show me the way?" "Yes, of course." The commander hurriedly nodded and led Mu Wanqing inside. Although Mu Wanqing had been missing for many years, her name had not been removed from the family's genealogy, so she was still a young lady of the Mu family, the most distinguished young lady. Most importantly, this young lady had broken through to the 4th tribulation realm and had brought back a super expert. Uncle Ru's aura was too powerful, comparable to the Grand Elders. How could this commander dare to be disrespectful? The commander led them inside. He knew where the Reverend King planet was, but he did not dare to bring them there. He could only lead them to a side hall and send someone to secretly inform the Grand Elder and Grand Elder. They were currently choosing a clan leader, so how could he bring Mu Wanqing and the others there? If he interfered with them, the elders would definitely tear him to shreds. Mu Wanqing followed him coldly, but she scanned her surroundings with her divine perception. She discovered that the City Lord's manor was heavily guarded, far more so than usual. She had already learned of her grandfather's death on the way here, and judging from the situation in the city, he had already been buried. Something big must have happened for the clan to be so heavily guarded. The city was very calm, and it did not seem like something big had happened. The answer was obvious. The clan was choosing a clan leader. Mu Wanqing immediately scanned the area with her divine perception and locked onto the Elder's Hall. Seeing that the doors were tightly shut and that there were soldiers outside, she felt confident. She turned around and walked towards the Elder's Hall. Young Lady Qing. This commander belonged to the Grand Elder's faction. When he saw Mu Wanqing walking towards the Elder's Hall, he immediately became anxious. He chased after her and said, "The Grand Elder has ordered that no one is allowed to wander around today. Please wait in the side hall. I will send someone to inform the Grand Elder." Uncle Ru. Mu Wanqing ignored this person and shouted in a low voice. Uncle Ru's body flashed, and he grabbed the person's neck with one hand before following Mu Wanqing step by step. And there were many soldiers nearby. When they saw that Uncle Ru actually dared to grab someone, they immediately acted as if they were facing a great enemy. They all surrounded them, and the soldiers in the nearby regions all gathered here. Scram! Mu Wanqing held the Reverend King's medallion in her hand and strode forward. Her charming face was cold, and she looked like a jade Rakshasa. Uncle Ru's aura was also released, and it instantly pressed down on the people nearby like mountains. The soldiers found it difficult to breathe, and their bodies trembled. What's the matter? The side door of the Elder's Hall opened, and an elder walked out. He immediately shouted, "Who dares to behave atrociously in our Mu clan?" Mu Wanqing stopped and looked at the elder. A faint smile appeared on her face, but no matter how one looked at it, it was a bit cold. She cupped her hands and said, "Wanqing greets 7th great uncle." "Wanqing?" The elder looked at Mu Wanqing, and after a few glances, he suddenly became furious and reprimanded. "Mu Wanqing, 18 years ago, you openly disobeyed the clan's orders and ran away from the marriage, causing the clan to lose face. You still have the face to come back? Moreover, you still dare to cause trouble in the clan. Do you think we don't dare to set up the clan's rules? What do you mean by causing trouble?" Mu Wanqing faintly smiled and said, "This servant offended his superior, and I only captured him. Is this considered causing trouble? Besides, did I ever agree to this wedding? You didn't even ask for my opinion and directly asked me to marry someone else. Is this fair to me?" Chapter 2342. 7th Great Uncle's seniority was very high, but his strength was not very high, and his status was indeed not particularly high. Mu Wanqing's forceful retort almost made 7th Great Uncle vomit blood. If it weren't for the fact that Mu Wanqing's strength was about the same as his and that she had Uncle Ru behind her, 7th Great Uncle would have definitely asked someone to take her down. Whoosh, 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 more and more of the clan soldiers were alerted and gathered here. Everyone heard the conversation between 7th Great Uncle and Mu Wanqing, and countless soldiers had a look of surprise on their faces. The eldest daughter of the clan, who had been missing for many years, had returned. Moreover, she had brought a supreme expert with her. Moreover, she had openly prepared to cause a huge ruckus in the clan. She had taken down a commander and had forcefully confronted the elders. Today was the day of the Elders' Hall's general meeting, and it was also the day of the selection of the patriarch. Mu Wanqing had returned at such a crucial time. Was she a helper hired by the Reverend King Star? The 7th elder had also considered this point. He said in a deep voice, "Mu Wanqing, let's not talk about what happened before. Right now, the family has important matters to attend to. Go to the side hall and wait. The Great Elder and the other elders will receive you later." The Elders' Hall was currently in the middle of voting. How could they let Mu Wanqing disturb them at such a crucial moment? Everything had to wait for the dust to settle before dealing with Mu Wanqing. Something important? Is it the election of the clan leader? Mu Wanqing smiled, then said coldly, as a direct descendant of the Mu family, I'm also at the fourth tribulation realm. According to the family rules, I should be given the position of an elder, right? Even if I'm not given the position of an elder, how can I not be qualified to participate in such a big event? Seventh great-uncle's expression changed. As expected, Mu Wanqing did not come with good intentions. With a straight face he said, nonsense. You're a woman, not to mention that you've been missing for many years. You even openly disobeyed the family's order to escape from the marriage. It's already a mercy that we're not arresting you now, yet you still dare to pester us endlessly. Ah! Mu Wanqing laughed out loud, but her smile was filled with loneliness. She said mockingly, sure enough, kind people are bullied. Our bloodline is weak, so everyone can bully us, right? Pester endlessly? Miss Japan was going to use force today. Seventh great-uncle, let me ask you one last time. Are you going to move or not? If you don't, I'm going to kill my way in. A white sword appeared in Mu Wanqing's hand. Ru Shu slapped the commander and he fainted. Luli left the team leader aside. A black saber appeared in his hand and killing intent spread out. Luli didn't release his chi and energy. He just took out the heaven separation bead. Mu Wanqing was dressed in a black robe. She had a beautiful figure and the aura of a fourth tribulation expert. The aura of a Yuluocha made her feel awe-inspiring, like a goddess of war. An uproar immediately broke out in the surroundings. There were already over 1,000 people gathered nearby, and they were all members of the Mu clan. They were all somewhat panicked and at a loss for what to do. The patriarch had just died, and the family's strength was greatly damaged. Was there going to be internal strife now? Who are they listening to? Mu Wanqing walked forward step by step. Uncle Ru and Luli followed her closely. Uncle Ru's momentum was so strong that it was like mountains were pressing down. Even seventh granduncle felt his soul was trembling. Seventh granduncle was of a higher seniority, but he was never strong. His comprehensive abilities were weak as well. He was forced back step by Uncle Ru. His face was filled with anger and grief. Mu Wanqing had decided to throw caution to the wind. Before she came, she had made up her mind. The branches were so powerful that it was impossible to negotiate. The only way was to suppress them with force. If push came to shove, she would purge the Mu family with blood. For the sake of her brother, for the sake of the old, weak, women and children of the immediate family, she had no other choice. Bang, 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 seventh granduncle had been forced back for dozens of steps. The Hall of Patriarchs was not far away. Seventh granduncle clenched his teeth and didn't want to go any further. Otherwise, he would lose all his face. Creak, the gate of the Hall of Patriarchs was pushed open. Groups of patriarchs swarmed out. It was impossible that they didn't know what was going on outside. The voting was about to end, but they had to pause it. Otherwise, Mu Wanqing would really kill her way in. By then, the Mu family would be bathed in blood. If it were only Mu Wanqing, the patriarchs wouldn't be worried. However, Uncle Ru was too powerful. His chi and energy were similar to that of Great Patriarch. If they were not careful with such a powerful warrior, they would be in big trouble. Big Sister, Reverend King Star had already thought about it. When he saw the figure that only appeared in his dreams, his eyes immediately turned red. He forced himself not to cry. He stared at Mu Wanqing. He was afraid that she would disappear in the blink of an eye. Mu Wanqing nodded lightly. She did not look at Reverend King Star for long. The current situation did not allow her to be distracted. She looked at Grand Elder and Grand Elder. After thinking for a moment, she bowed slightly and said, Wanqing pays her respects to Grand Elder, Eldest Elder, and all the other patriarchs. Grand Elder snorted and ignored her. Grand Elder, however, nodded slightly and smiled. Wanqing, you're back? It's good that you're back. Let's talk about it later. Bring your friend to settle down first. I'll come and see you later. Grand Elder's words were light and breezy. It was as if he wanted to resolve the situation. Mu Wanqing, however, did not move. She did not want to beat around the bush with a group of people. She said coldly, Grandfather Bin Tian, according to the rules, Reverend King Star is a direct descendant. Why hasn't he inherited the position of clan head? Why are you still holding a meeting? Are you going to choose a clan head? Are you trying to bully us because we have no one? Or are you trying to start anew and split the Mu clan apart? Mu Wanqing's words were sharp and aggressive. She did not give them any face at all. More than 1,000 clansmen had already gathered nearby. They were prepared to fall out completely. Scoundrel! All the elders' faces changed. Grand Elder was enraged. His eyes were filled with killing intent. He said angrily, A little lass dares to ignore the ancestral teachings and clan rules? She dares to disregard her elders? Do you believe that I will kill you with one palm strike? The disciplinary hall elder also said angrily, Mu Wanqing, if you still think of yourself as a descendant of the Mu clan, then you will have to obey the Mu clan's rules. If you don't, then I will immediately expel you from the Mu clan. Please leave Mu Immortal City as well. If not, you will be considered an invasion. Kiki. Mu Wanqing laughed. She looked around and said, All of you look so dignified and righteous. You know very well what you are thinking in your hearts. Let's not talk about these useless things. I will say one thing today. Whoever wants to usurp the position of clan head of Reverend King Star will have to do it over my dead body first. Big sister, Reverend King Star grew anxious. He was just about to say something when Mu Wanqing waved her hand and said, Wanqing, you don't have to say anything. Big sister is here today. I want to see how these people can cover the sky with one hand. Good, good, good. The Grand Elder laughed loudly and looked at the disciplinary hall elder. The latter immediately said coldly, Mu Wanqing has gone against the rules and openly disregarded the clan's rules and elders. I am now representing the clan to officially expel Mu Wanqing from the clan. Mu Wanqing, please leave immediately. If not, you will be considered an invasion of the Mu clan. We will take measures to protect the Mu clan's dignity. Isn't it just a fight? Chapter 23:43. Any fight for power would never rely on word. It would rely on fists and strength. Both sides had their own interests to pursue. Neither side could convince the other. In the end, they had to resort to fighting. Winner takes all. Whoever won would represent justice. Mu Wanqing was no longer the young lady who knew nothing. She had been through many things over the years and had seen through many things. Otherwise, she wouldn't have asked Luli for help at the cost of her own life on the battlefield. Only with absolute strength could one have the right to speak. This was an unchanging truth. Mu Wanqing didn't want to waste more time. If they didn't want to fight, then fight. If not, then talk. Whoosh, Uncle Ru and Luli flew up as well. This time, Luli had attracted a lot of attention. Nobody had paid attention to him before. Some were surprised. What was a warrior at the peak of the second tribulation doing? Could he be of any help? Even if he wanted to wave flags and shout battle cries, he didn't have to go up. There must be something wrong. What was more, Luli was calm. He didn't panic at all. It was as if he was the master here and everyone else was puny. That was why people had to take him seriously. Great Patriarch and Chief Patriarch looked at Luli. They didn't see anything wrong. Luli must be hiding his realm, or he was at the peak of the second tribulation. Since Mu Wanqing had declared war, then there was nothing else to say. Great Patriarch and Chief Patriarch didn't want to step back. They had to fight. They looked at each other and nodded. They made some eye contact and reached an agreement. They were going to work together to defeat Mu Wanqing. They would defeat the immediate family first and then they would compete. Sis, Reverend King Star was losing patience. Mu Wanqing had brought back a powerful warrior, but she was alone. Great Patriarch and Chief Patriarch working together could cause problems. Whoosh, he flew up trying to help. But a patriarch next to him stopped him. That patriarch shook his head and said, "Young Master Xing, don't be impulsive. If you go up there, the family will fall into internal strife." When the Grand Elder saw what Reverend King Xing was doing, he coldly snorted and said, "Everyone, don't move. Mu Ranzhen and I will go test it out. If we lose, we won't care about the family anymore." The Grand Elder's intentions were clear. The people from the Reverend King planet were not to act recklessly, and they would only send out 2 people. If the Reverend King Star and the others made a move, then the other elders of the clan would have no choice but to act as well. At that time, the entire clan would be thrown into chaos, and the situation would become uncontrollable. The Grand Elder had another layer of meaning. They would not interfere with the matter of the clan's defeat, which meant that they had tacitly approved of the Reverend King Star's ascension. On the other hand, if they won, then they would be in charge of the clan's affairs in the future, and the Reverend King Star's bloodline would lose all authority. Although Reverend King Xing was very anxious, he didn't dare act recklessly after hearing the Grand Elder's words. As the successor of the direct bloodline, he had been raised to prioritize the interests of the family since he was young. He knew very well that if he made a move, the entire Mu family would be consigned to eternal damnation. "Wang Xing, just watch from the side." Mu Wan glanced at the Reverend King Star and proudly said, "Watch as big sister cleans up the traitors and sets things right." Xiao. With that said, Mu Wanqing flew out of the city with Uncle Ru and Lu Li. Naturally, the battle between such powerful warriors could not take place inside the city. Otherwise, the city of Rejoicing Immortal would be reduced to ruins. "Don't act rashly," Chief Patriarch said. He glanced to all the patriarchs and said, "Great Patriarch and I will go and learn from our friends outside. No matter what happens, you must not act rashly. If I die, you will listen to Wang Xing from now on." Great Patriarch and Chief Patriarch had a good sense of the big picture. They didn't want to see the Mu family descend into chaos. One battle would decide the outcome. If they won, Reverend King Star would lose his chance to ascend. If they lost, everyone in the family would obey Reverend King Star's command. In this way, no matter what happened, the family could survive. Whoosh, the 2 of them flew away and followed Mu Wanqing into the city. After a while, all the patriarchs went after them, and so did the other commanders. As for the warriors, they were not allowed to watch the battle. They had to wait in the city until it was over. Mu Wanqing and the other 2 were 30,000 miles away from the city and stood in a barren mountain. As soon as Mu Wanqing flew over, she said to Lu Li, "Young Master Lu, later, Uncle Ru and I will fight against Great Patriarch. Please help me deal with Chief Patriarch." At first, Lu Li thought he would have to deal with a group of patriarchs. Now that he only had to deal with Chief Patriarch, he was relieved. Chief Patriarch was only at the middle stage of the 4th tribulation realm. For Lu Li, this was nothing. Lu Li nodded and asked, "Do you want him dead or alive?" Mu Wanqing replied coldly. A glint of coldness rose in her eyes as she said, "If he surrenders, I will spare his life. But if he refuses to come to his senses, then don't show him any mercy." "Okay," Lu Li answered. He admired Mu Wanqing more and more. She was someone special and had the potential to become a heroine of the generation. At this rate, she might become the second Luo Fian. On the other hand, Lu Li was not optimistic about Reverend King Star. He thought Mu Wanqing was more suitable to be the family patriarch of the Mu family. Whoosh, Great Patriarch and Chief Patriarch flew over. The other patriarchs came as well, but they watched from a distance of more than 300 miles. None of them came over. They had reached a tacit understanding that nobody would interfere. Only the end of the fight was waiting. Great Patriarch looked at Uncle Ru with rising fighting spirit. To be able to fight with someone of similar strength was a kind of improvement for him. Chief Patriarch looked at Mu Wanqing, feeling embarrassed to make a move. After all, he was a senior. To fight a junior would be like bullying, especially when the former family patriarch's body was still warm. Whoosh! Uncle Ru didn't like to talk much. He started the fight right away and dashed toward Great Patriarch. At the same time, Mu Wanqing moved as well. She rushed toward Great Patriarch in a blur. Chief Patriarch was confused. Mu Wanqing and Uncle Ru were going to fight Great Patriarch. Who was he going to fight? A warrior at the peak of the second tribulation realm? Was she trying to humiliate him? In the distance, the patriarchs and commanders were surprised as well. They could not understand why Luli was here to fight. Was he tired of living? Hey, old man! Luli could tell that Chief Patriarch was displeased. He didn't take him seriously at all. Luli raised his eyebrows, looked at Chief Patriarch and said, "Stop looking. I am your opponent. If you can defeat me, I will support you to be the family patriarch of the Mu family. How about that?" "How dare you!" Chief Patriarch flew into a rage. He had been in charge of the Mu family for many years. All the patriarchs of the older generation treated him with respect, let alone the younger generation. How dare this punk be so arrogant? Go to hell. Mu Wanqing was the granddaughter of the former family patriarch, so he had some concerns. But Luli was an outsider, yet he showed no mercy. He took out a saber and dashed toward Luli in a blur. Luli didn't move. The distant heaven bead glowed, and the Phantom King came out. Roar! As soon as the Phantom King came out, he howled to the sky. His ferocious chi and energy spread out, making the temperature drop. Woo woo! Chapter 2344. The Phantom King's aura presence was too strong. If it was an adult Phantom King, even the Grand Elder would have to run. An adult Phantom King's aura presence was also very frightening. The Grand Elder's expression changed drastically, while the elders and commanders in the distance also grew serious. Reverend King Star and the others, however, looked delighted. Originally, everyone thought that Uncle Ru alone would not be able to suppress the Grand Elder and the Grand Elder. Now, this peak stage 2 Tribulation Phantom King had given them a huge surprise. Swish! The Grand Elder turned and wanted to retreat, but the distance was too close, and the Phantom King was too fast. There was no time for him to retreat, and the Phantom King was already close. Bang! He had no choice but to fight with the Phantom King. They exchanged a few moves at lightning speed, causing sparks and a few muffled sounds. The Grand Elder felt a little more confident. This Phantom King was not very abnormal, and he should be able to suppress it. It seemed like the Phantom King was not an adult. Otherwise, he would not be a match for it. As for Guiying, he was not worried. He had a demon soul in his soul spirit, and he thought that ordinary evil spirits would not be able to break through the demon soul's defense. Soon, he realized that he was wrong. After Guiying entered his soul spirit, he realized that the demon soul was having a hard time resisting. He guessed that the demon soul would not be able to hold on for another 15 minutes. This meant that he had to kill the Phantom King within 15 minutes. Otherwise, he would be the one dead. He roared and took out a lamp. This was a secret treasure. He was going to burn the Phantom King alive. The lantern danced in the air, and sparks flew out of it toward the Dark Spirit King. However, the Phantom King was too fast. It was like a gust of wind, and every time it attacked, it would retreat. Occasionally, some sparks would land on the Phantom King's body, causing its scales to emit green smoke. However, it was not fatal. On the other side, the Grand Elder's battle was in a stalemate. Uncle Ru and the Grand Elder's battle strength were about the same. He originally thought that Mu Wanqing was only at the early stage of the fourth tribulation and would not be a threat to him. Who would have thought that Mu Wanqing had actually comprehended a rather powerful spatial intent that could affect his speed a little. Although his speed was reduced a little, it did not affect him much. However, he was at a disadvantage and was being suppressed by Uncle Ru. The group of elders exchanged glances. They originally thought that the Grand Elder and Grand Elder would be able to easily suppress Uncle Ru and Mu Wanqing, but they didn't expect that Mu Wanqing's people would easily suppress the two of them. That little peak of the second tribulation actually had such a powerful war beast and such a powerful ghost. The battle continued, and slowly, it became more and more difficult for the Supreme Elder because the Supreme Elder was injured. He had been injured by Ru Shu, and he had been injured twice. Although there didn't seem to be much of a problem, something would definitely happen if this continued. The Great Elder was barely able to hold on. However, as time passed, it became more and more difficult for his goblin soul to hold on. The Ghost King was covered in wounds, but it was still very difficult for him to kill the Ghost King. Lu Li didn't move. He just stood there and watched. The Great Elder's eyes turned, and the magic lamp in his hand spun in a circle. Countless white flames flew out and forced the Ghost King back. Die! The Chief Patriarch shouted. He dashed forward like an arrow. Murderous intent spread out from him. The saber in his hand glowed with flames. He was ready to use his most powerful move to kill Lu Li in one move. Lu Li didn't step back. The distant heaven bead in his hand glowed. Then one wind warcraft after another came out. He didn't send out too many, just 30. Few, as soon as the wind warcraft came out, 15 of them released skills related to wind. The horns on the heads of the other wind warcraft glowed. Hiss, hiss in the distance, the group of patriarchs and leaders gasped. The wind warcraft were as powerful as warriors of the fourth tribulation. Lu Li had sent out 30 wind warcraft at once, which meant 30 warriors of the fourth tribulation. The entire Mu family only had more than 30 warriors of the fourth tribulation. Lu Li alone was almost as powerful as the entire Mu family. No! The Chief Patriarch yelled. He was slowed down by the skill related to wind. The energy from the horns of the 15 wind warcraft made him feel a fatal sense of danger in his soul. Old man, it is not too late to throw in the towel now, Lu Li said. The Chief Patriarch's eyes flickered. He made up his mind but said nothing. He just released a white halo. Surrendering was harder than death for him, not to mention to 2 juniors. Whoosh, 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 rays of white light flew over and landed on Chief Patriarch's shield one after another. Chief Patriarch's defense was not bad. He managed to survive 10 rays of light, but the latter part of the shield was penetrated. Boom, boom, boom. The other 5 rays of light landed on Chief Patriarch, leaving 5 bloody holes on his body. Fortunately, none of the rays hit his vital parts, so he was not killed. What? Chief Patriarch's team was in a panic. If Chief Patriarch was killed, not only would the Mu family lose a powerful warrior, but their team would lose their leader as well. They would be without a leader. The horns of the wind warcraft glowed again. Lu Li asked one last time, "Do you surrender or not? If not, I will kill you." Lu Li's words were meant for Mu Wanqing to hear. She didn't say anything, which meant she agreed with Lu Li's decision. The Grand Elder glanced over. He was furious, but he didn't know what to do. "You bastard, I will kill you!" The First Elder roared furiously and slashed out with his saber. A shocking pillar of light, accompanied by surging waves of fire, swept out, causing the surrounding space to distort. It was as if the sky had been set ablaze. Ha ha! Lu Li stepped back quickly. A flying sword appeared in his hand and flew out in an arc. More than a dozen rays of light pierced through Chief Patriarch's shield again. This time, Chief Patriarch was more seriously injured. Whoosh! A ray of green light pierced into Chief Patriarch's body. The flying sword stirred up and Chief Patriarch's body was minced up. Lu Li's cruelty had shocked many people. Many showed hatred in their eyes as well. But Lu Li didn't mind. If they dared to mess around, he wouldn't mind killing some more for Mu Wanqing. Whoosh whoosh! The Dark Spirit King and Ghost Shadow rushed toward the Grand Elder and joined their side. When the Grand Elder saw the situation, he knew that if this continued, he would definitely die. Great Patriarch sighed and said, "Never mind. There will always be talents in every generation. The new generation will replace the old. I admit defeat. I will go to the Earth Flame Mountain to cultivate. I will leave the family business alone." The Earth Flame Mountain was where the ancestors of the Mu family were buried. Cultivating there was equivalent to guarding the tomb. Usually, only the elders at the end of their lives would go there to live in seclusion. Great Patriarch's willingness to go there meant that he was giving up the fight for power. He would stay out of the family business and would only show up when the family was in danger. This was the best outcome. "Goodbye, Great Patriarch." Mu Wanqing stepped back and so did Uncle Ru. Lu Li, of course, called back the Phantom King and the Wind Warcraft. The highest elder sighed slightly and flew into the distance without any hesitation. "Come on, collect Chief Patriarch's body and bury him." Mu Wanqing shouted and directly gave the command. One of the elders waved his hand, and a few commanders flew over and collected the corpse. "Let's go back." Chapter 2345. The family patriarch of the Mu family had just passed away when the second funeral began. The chief patriarch who had been in charge of the family affairs passed away. Another piece of news came out. Reverend King Star had become the new family patriarch. Soon, the news spread out. The entire Mu family was in turmoil. Mu Wanqing, who had been missing for years, had come back. She defeated Great Patriarch, killed Chief Patriarch and subdued all the patriarchs of the family. Some people in the family were shaken, but the general situation was stabilized for now. As long as the patriarchs were subdued, the rest would be easy. It seemed that the patriarchs had been subdued. Truth would be revealed by force. If they were not convinced, then they would have to die or go to the mausoleum with Great Patriarch. If the patriarchs wanted to shine in their positions for a few more years, then they would have to yield. The patriarchs did not want the Mu family to be divided. Once the family was divided, the Mu family would be reduced to a small family or even be wiped out. Reverend King Star had no one to rely on for years. He was more mature than others. After he became the family patriarch, he was not condescending. He listened to Mu Wanqing. He suppressed some patriarchs and roped in others. He did not go too far. He merely transferred some of the more important clans away and divided their power. Mu Wanqing did not slack off either. She had been making plans for Reverend King Star, managing the family affairs and stabilizing the family. Lu Li lived at ease at the Mu family. He was not bored out of his mind. He was waiting for Mu Wanqing to give him the 10 billion divine stones. He had done his job and now he was waiting for the reward. With the 10 billion divine stones, he could teleport to the Broken Sword Mountain with them. But he was not in a hurry. It would take some time for Reverend King Star to take control of the family. He could not ask Reverend King Star to open the Department of Internal Affairs and hand over 10 billion divine stones right away. Lu Li stayed in the backyard to cultivate the fundamental principle of the divine sound. He had not mastered the fundamental principle yet. He felt that he had only learned less than half of it. The fundamental principle was so powerful that it was impossible to learn it in a short time. Soon, a month had passed. Lu Li was alarmed. The inhibition formation in his room lit up. He opened the door and saw that it was dark outside. Mu Wanqing walked in wearing a pink dress. Mu Wanqing liked to wear black dresses, which gave her an aloof and elegant look. Now, she was wearing a pink dress, which made her more charming. She smiled before saying anything, making the whole room feel a little brighter. Luli invited her in, made her a cup of tea and said, "Are you done? It should be more or less stable." Mu Wanqing nodded slightly, then sighed and said, "The old master is dead, and the great elder would rather die than surrender. The clan was weak to begin with, and it's too difficult to recover now. It'll take at least a few hundred to 1,000 years. And this is under the premise that the clan does not fall into chaos and there are no external enemies invading." And Luli nodded. It was hard for a big family to rise. Unless the family could have a powerful warrior, the family could only develop slowly. Take the Lu family for example. Because of Luli, the Lu family soared to the top. First, the Lu family became the most powerful in the Heaven Reverse universe, then the most powerful in the 9 universes, and then the most powerful in the divinity. Now, the Lu family had gone to the second heaven. But the foundation of the Lu family was thin. Apart from Luli, the other warriors of the Lu family were too weak. To truly become a super family, it would take years of accumulation. A super clan didn't just have one super expert, but countless super experts. Mu Wanqing took out a ring. She pushed it over and said, "There are 12 billion divine stones in here. The Mu family is a large family, but Wang Xing has just been promoted. This is all we can offer. Young Master Lu, I hope you don't mind." 12 billion? Luli was surprised. He took over the ring and took out 2 billion divine stones to put into another interspatial ring. Handing it over, he said, "Whatever you say. The Mu family has many things to do. Give the extra to your brother to develop the family." At this time, it was Mu Wanqing's turn to be surprised. Then, she felt something. As far as she could tell, a powerful warrior like Luli would not be in need of divine stones. The fact that he didn't ask for more was proof enough. It was for her body. What else could Luli want? He could only lend a hand when he saw injustice. On the thought of this, Mu Wanqing's eyes reddened. She looked at Luli with respect. She took out the jug, poured 2 goblets of wine and said gratefully, "Then I will propose a toast to you, young Master Lu. Thank you for your help." Luli was not being generous. 10 billion divine stones were enough for them to teleport over. 2 billion more wouldn't make any difference. If Luli could give him another 10 billion, he might accept it. "Lady Wanqing, where are you going next? Are you going to stay at the Mu family or go back to the Ziyang mainland?" Luli asked casually while drinking. Now that he had the divine stones, he was ready to set off. This time, he would teleport to the Broken Sword Mountain to find Inqingxi. "I plan to stay at the Mu family for a while. I will see when the Mu family has stabilized." Mu Wanqing sighed. She would always be an outsider at the Ziyang mainland, living under someone else's roof. But now, she felt she was an outsider at the Mu family as well. Apart from her brother, the others would look at her with a different meaning. She could not be close to them. "Ha ha!" Luli said with a smile, "Women can strive to improve themselves. You have stayed at the Ziyang mainland. You must know about the Devil Sea. There is a force at the Devil Sea called the Palace of Devils. Their master is a woman. At the Devil Sea, she is a big shot that can shake the world. Also, I have seen many powerful female warriors. As long as a woman strives to improve herself, she can have a wonderful life." Strive to improve herself. Mu Wanqing's eyes glowed. She said, "Thank you, young Master Lu, for enlightening me. I will work hard. In the future, when I have some achievements, I will go and thank you." "Here you go." Luli picked up his goblet and said, "Now that I have finished my business, I will leave tomorrow. We will meet again if fate allows." "You are leaving tomorrow?" Mu Wanqing was reluctant to see him go. She looked at Luli with hidden bitterness, like a disgruntled wife who could not win the love of her man. "Young Master Lu," Mu Wanqing wanted to say something but stopped on second thought. She just picked up her goblet and drank to drown her sorrows. Her face was getting redder and redder. Her eyes became misty as if she was drunk. Luli drank in silence as well. His mind was in turmoil. She was as pretty as a piece of jade, and her eyes were misty. On top of that, she seemed to be at his mercy. If it were any other man, they would not be able to restrain themselves. Luli would be lying if he said he was not tempted at all. But he did not do anything rash. He must be responsible for what he did. Otherwise, he would feel uneasy. If he left Mu Wanqing here alone, he would think about her often. The two of them had not developed any real feelings yet. It was better to restrain each other. They drank until midnight. Seeing that Luli still didn't do anything, Mu Wanqing staggered to her feet. She looked at Luli deeply and then gathered up her courage to say, "Young Master Lu, can I hug you?" "Of course." You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.